All right, well, we're back. And for once, the week has actually not been technically worse than the week prior. It's just kind of on level and slightly less worse, right?
I mean, that's kind of the general feeling, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly not good, but it's like, when everything's on fire and the flames die down a little bit, it's
People
like,
haven't been throwing gas on it quite as effectively.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, well, maybe they're just finding that everything's on fire and they're just not able to really light anything else around them. So,
Yeah,
I
the cities have already burned down, so there's that.
yeah, they're probably looking for new cities to burn. So, don't let them know what's going on. So, anyway, we're unfortunately missing Steve tonight because he's got important, I believe, educational stuff and
The
something else
day
to do
is
as well.
mine.
So, yes, it's me and Craig. And I'm going to start out with something very interesting that has come out of some recent
Yes.
recent releases of FBI docs involving Seth Rich.
Mm.
So, let
Oh,
me
were these via FOIA?
let me see here. 68 pages released, and
Must
I'll
be via
actually
FOIA.
put a link as well to the released PDF so that anyone that wants to can read over them specifically. But from the article, the documents are related to the Seth Rich murder. A basic interpretation by a lawyer saying it shows no signs of a robbery, which we kind of already knew. Quick refresher: Seth Rich was a staffer at the DNC. Later, it was very heavily hinted that he might be the one who leaked the Russia emails involving the
The
Clintons and
ones that couldn't be possibly done by Trump and his campaign from WikiLeaks because of the way that the dates were set up, which did not prevent the press from fucking that story up.
indeed, indeed. So just a quick backstory on that is Seth Rich one day is walking down the street in D.C. Somebody comes up and kills him in some sort of mugging or robbery gone wrong.
And then forgets to take the wallet, shoes, or anything else
Yeah,
of value,
literally
except
nothing is
maybe a
taken from
USB
him.
key.
Yeah, there might have been a USB key that we do not know.
That's entirely supposition on our part.
All we do
My
know
part.
is that such a thing had already been copied elsewhere, and so anything that was done was too little too late.
Hmm.
But you had mentioned something about that data, and that's the real curious part of all this. When all this was
Oh yeah.
investigated, it was found that the data, the transfer speeds alone, are just too fast for the internet. They're USB
Pretty much.
3
Period.
speeds. So they're not even just too fast for the internet. They're faster than most given networks. And
So a network LAN um, you can get like a 10 gig LAN, and most LANs aren't going to be 10 gig LANs. If you have like gigabit LAN, that's pretty common. Um, and that's going to be over relatively short runs, but a lot of LANs are gigabit. Um, and that's gigabit, not gigabyte. So you're talking about maybe a couple hundred gigabytes per second, or sorry, megabytes per second, not gigabytes. So that's a thousand bits per sorry, 1,000 megabits per second. Divide that by 8, and there you go.
yeah, 8 bits per byte.
Right. So a couple hundred megabytes per second is nowhere near the like 400 to 600 megabytes per second you can get on USB. Period. Like the SATA bus in your computer, which is going to be what feeds into USB. Like you're going to be maxing out on your USB maybe around 450 megabytes per second. If you've got a good USB key, a USB 3.0 key, you're easily able to match that. Like your write speeds aren't going to be perfect on that, but like we're talking about better than LAN speed here. And if you have supposing that the DNC had fantastic internet, if you include the interchanges to get to a foreign adversary, for example, which is what they were saying happened, that the hack was international. Even if you're downloading to a government server in China or Russia, I believe they're just saying Russia did it. Even if you're doing that, you have to go across the Pacific and you have to go through multiple server bounces to get there, at least on the state side. So it's not going to be this direct link and then boom, there goes the data. Simply not going to be that fast.
Yeah, that is one thing that's actually kind of accurate about the old hacker movies. You know, there's always that downloading scene. That's really a thing.
Were they sitting there waiting with their, biting their nails and shit? Yeah.
I mean, even on the fastest internet, if you're trying to pull enough data, it just takes time.
Yeah. I mean, I've got nearly gigabit where I am right now. And it still takes a while to pull gigs of data. And it's so when and you have to keep in mind, it depends on where the bottleneck is. If the bottleneck's on my end, it doesn't take that long, but like if the bottleneck is on their end, it's going to be a while.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the nature of things.
Oh, holy shit, this set of slides is so long. I'm looking through slides for another topic at the moment that
No, we've got more to go over, but I'll have a link to the Newsmax article here because not really anybody else is following up on it.
Is the Newsmax article okay? So that's,
and I'll have the actual release from the DOJ as well will be linked. So
the actual release would be the better thing to
I'm going to put both in there, but I'll have the Newsmax article if somebody wants to just read over it and get a brief overview. Yeah. There's some other things linked there, but I will have the proper stuff directly available for you. Now, above and beyond that, just in the past few days, as a matter of fact, I believe Friday, the Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccine was reapproved. It's going to have a warning now, from my understanding. And I will say this, it is the only vaccine that has been openly endorsed by Don Treasy, and it's the only vaccine I personally endorse. So if you were kind of on the fence, I take no personal issue with this. So, take that as my endorsement for what it's worth. If you have to, definitely get the Johnson & Johnson. If you don't have to and you don't want to, well, I mean, you do you. But absolutely, if you have to, please get this one. It's just safer, I think.
So, I had to push back on that. In terms of safety...
You're welcome to. Go ahead.
In terms of safety, Pfizer is still the best one of the three. But certainly, if you're averse to the mRNA vaccines, you're perfectly within your rights to be, and it's wholly reasonable. Especially if you're not, you're not versed in the data, you're not kind of keeping up with what's been going on in the research in the past couple decades. In terms of the cancer therapies that it's been involved in, and other kinds of research that went into the coronavirus vaccines, especially after SARS hit and had that blowback from China attempting their own vaccine and causing all that enhancement. If you haven't been keeping up with all this stuff, then you wouldn't really have any idea of the safety profile.
Well, it can, but it also can not. But you had mentioned something there, the cancer vaccine with that. It looks like there's been... Did we go over that on a show? Some of the recent updates with that?
No, I mean, so there's been multiple vaccines that have been done with cancer based on this technology.
Yeah, it looks like the most promising one, I think I might have reported on this recently, but if not, just a quick update is that they've been using it on patients who have gotten cancers, and then they have tailored a treatment to those specific cancers so that essentially the way that's, if you understand at all how it's being used, it causes your body to produce these cells that your immune system will respond to and learn these are enemy cells. It can do that same thing that it does with the coronavirus with
So
these cancer
it's
cells.
not that it produces cells. It produces markers that appear on the surface of the cells. So the same thing is what's going on with the COVID vaccines. It produces surface proteins only. It doesn't produce any of the interior stuff.
Okay, is that how the isn't that though how the adenovirus one works? Like
Nope.
the
So the adenovirus one works differently. It uses the adenovirus. It decorates the outside of the adenovirus instead. So the spike proteins produced by the mRNA vaccine are just the protein. There's nothing else of the virus involved. No other parts, no viral carrier, no nothing.
oh
That's
yeah,
one of
no,
the
I
major
understand that.
challenges
It's
they had
basically
was
just
to create
yeah, no, it's basically
stabilization
just
of the model.
mimicking the coronavirus, right?
Well, all it does is produce the surface protein. That's it. And that
Well,
mRNA degrades after about 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, there isn't a strand of it left in your body. Period. There's no rearrangement of your DNA, no nothing. It goes away. So mRNA, basically, if it's not being used by a ribosome to transcribe and make protein, it's getting degraded. So it's kind of a use it or lose it thing. And once it starts degrading, it stops functioning. Like it's no longer able to be used in a ribosome to make your proteins, to make enzymes and such.
no, well, fair enough.
So it's messenger RNA. So it is the RNA that is sent around the body too, and freely in the bloodstream. That happens all the time. Just the mRNA, once it's injected into you, most of it gets taken up like right away near the injection site. Some of it makes its way around to other parts of your body, but the general inflammation around your whole body is going to be what sets off. That's going to be part of the immune response. The mRNA is bound up pretty quickly into your cells. Some of it floats around a little bit, but most of it's in your cells. It gets used in the ribosome to make proteins right away, to make the spike proteins. After 2 weeks, though, it's basically gone. There's, like I said, not a strand of it's in you. After a few days, even, it's mostly gone.
Well, but to play devil's advocate here, and
Absolutely, go ahead.
one could hijack such a function, right? I mean, you
Well,
could put
in the
something
sense that
else
you
there
could put,
too.
yeah, you could always put something else in there, but in the same way, you could always put smallpox in the adenovirus vaccine. I'm not saying that this is something that's likely. In fact, I'd say it's very much not likely that that's going to happen. If you wanted to go full, and I'm not saying it's going to be a conspiracy theory here because people have fucked up before, people have been evil assholes before. So it's not like it's outside the realm of human behavior. But if you wanted to be the evil genius in the, in take over things, this is direct access to part of your cellular machinery. This is not using the immune system directly like you would with a weakened virus and just have the weakened virus get mulched up by T cells and brought over. Instead,
just as a by the by, there does not exist such a vaccine for the coronavirus at this time, and there might not.
well, so that's the thing that's another thing that's a little bit bothersome about this. This vaccine, these mRNA vaccines, I would say are about as safe as your annual flu vaccines. And about as tested, kind of about as safe. So there's been a long research history that's gone into these, and the current present-day model is the latest and greatest of them. So that's always true of every annual flu vaccine as well. Just to put that out there, like your annual flu vaccine has never been tested before that year because it has to be modified for the new flu viruses that have been out.
Oh, that's a fair point. I will freely admit I don't get the yearly flu vaccine. I just assume I'm sick.
Fine, yeah. And it's, again, the major hazard of this virus is that it is novel. Your immune system can freak out and you can just basically kill yourself.
Oh, yeah, no. And actually, that's maybe something else we should mention after we go over this specifically is some of the some of the other issues. Well, actually, we have to go over that
Oh,
because that's another
well,
point
yeah.
we're going to make. Some of the long haul stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like I was saying this shit in February last year, isn't it?
Yeah, we've.
Almost
Well,
like it.
I think we've actually talked. Well, yeah, actually, I had Kevin McCarran on. We had talked about some of the COVID zombie stuff, even. Where it can cross the blood-brain barrier, and in
Oh
some
yeah,
people just makes
it'll propagate nerves. We know that. We know
Yeah,
it'll propagate nerves. Like
one of the
rabies at that
very
point.
common symptoms that people complain of is the loss of taste and smell. I mean, that doesn't happen with any cold or flu.
Now here's the thing. That can happen purely due to inflammation around the nerves, choking off the signals.
Right, but that's a different method of action, though. That's
that seems to be the common mode by which that happens to date.
Well, traditionally.
No, just for COVID, it seems to be that inflammation is the basis for the most part for the loss of taste and smell.
Oh, really?
For the most part, and
it might be that it's just inflammation. Actually, I didn't know that there'd been anything much.
Well, so that the suspicion is that there, in cases where it doesn't come back, where the sense of smell doesn't come back, either the nerves have been damaged by the inflammation response, so your body attacking itself, or the virus got in there and started propagating and killed the nerves. Both of which lead to the same outcome effectively, but one of which could potentially allow for a downstream effect of having further nerve propagation. So in either case, the nerve ends up dead, and you lose a sense of smell and taste. But if it's the virus that did it, it could be the virus still propagating in the nerves, which is bad news bears.
Oh yeah, that's like right. That's akin to a cancer that's eating away at you.
Right. It's or like amoebic meningitis. That's your brain gets eaten alive at that point, right?
And there you go.
So it's not a good thing. It's not like, for instance, with chickenpox where it hides out in your nerves, but it just kind of hangs out next to your spine and doesn't go away until you get some sort of sickness later, and then it goes, aha, time for shingles. It could be that also ends up being the way this works. Herpes is another example. That hangs out in your facial nerves. If you didn't know that wonderful detail about herpes simplex 1, it hangs out in your facial nerves near your nose, up in the top of your cheek, under your eye. There's nerves there, nerve bundles. It hangs out there until you get sick or stressed, and then it causes an outbreak near your mouth again.
Fascinating.
Yeah, wonderful stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, the other article I was wanting to link on this is from the New York Post. National Institute of Health director says that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has a lower risk of side effects than aspirin, which is a bold-ish claim, but not really. If we take into account the entirely tiny cross-section of issues that cropped up, it was, I believe, all in one location. 8 women had blood clots, and I believe they were all on the same birth control medication.
So were they? So that's okay. Okay, so I've been going through. I need to find the presentation that actually says what the fuck was going on. That would be the one to look at. I'm guessing it's the extremely long one, which will be annoying, but
yeah. Well,
didn't want to go through all those slides, but it's fine. I'm gonna have to read them eventually.
Well, largely what's happened here is a very small section of people got very bad sick, and I can see this being.
All right, last set of slides on that page. Slide set 6 by Oliver. Page 36, potential harms of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. 7.98 million vaccine doses administered, 15 confirmed TTS cases. That would be thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome. So that's thrombosis, meaning you got a blood clot. Thrombocytopenia, meaning an absence of blood platelets, or absence of platelets in the blood. So that without DIC, which is the distributed coagulation pathology. So absence of no DIC involved, but having thrombosis, so blood clots, and having a lack of platelets in the blood, thrombocytopenia. that as a syndrome, so TTS, 15 confirmed cases out of 7.98 million vaccine doses administered as of April 21st. Additional potential cases under review, including potential male cases. To date, no male cases. 13 cases, 18 to 49 years old females. 2 cases, 50 plus years old. In the doses administered, that's 13 cases out of a little over 1.8 million. For 50 plus, it is 2 cases out of a little over 2.1 million. So the reporting rate for 18 to 49 years old is 7 per million, and for 50 plus, it's 0.9 per million. So that's a better assessment of, this is what I meant by having it wasn't going to be 6 cases in 7 million doses. That idea that it was less than a 1 in a million chance didn't take into account other cross-sectional details. So 13 cases and 1.8 million doses at a rate of 7 per million. That's the real rate. That's 7 times the 1 in a million chance. Again, still a pretty small chance. So this is good news. 7 out of a million is quite low.
Yeah.
If you look at the other kinds of risks that are involved, 7 per million is way less than the death rate.
And another thing to consider too is what we don't hear about with the Janssen vaccine is the weird problems that we're hearing about with the Pfizer and the Moderna. We're not hearing about women having issues.
So that's with the Moderna.
Is that one the
so
Moderna?
Far.
Not the Pfizer?
I think that's just... it might be with Pfizer too. It very well could be. But I haven't... I think that and this might be a selection bias. It might just be random chance here, but I think every time I've seen it, I've just noticed Moderna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as I'm looking at this too, I'm seeing a big drop-off on the Moderna as well, so that one might be the one that's having the issues.
So Moderna, I also saw, had a couple of blood clot issues, and this, again, could also be random chance. This is why they do these studies when they have these kind of issues. Is it different from background? Because background can happen if you get the vaccine too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is possible you can have some of the odd effects.
In fact, it would be hilarious
as if you would get COVID.
It would be very, very much interesting if getting the vaccine alleviated these problems in general. So if the rate at which these things happened after vaccination went down in the vaccinated population relative to background, that would, if anything, be a reason to get vaccinated, which, again, would be weird. You would not expect to see that kind of significant shift.
No, I can't imagine.
And I would also hate to see that, largely for the amount of bullshit that would come out of that in the media, saying, oh, by the way, here's the other reason you should get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. Also, hate everybody who doesn't. Just nutty people.
Yeah, as I've said before, I'm boycotting any place that requires vaccination. I won't do business there. That's just not going to happen.
Well, like I said before, and people keep saying this won't happen, but like if you're going to go down that slope, you know it's happening already. Like that you won't need a quote vaccine passport to get into a grocery store. Like the moment you require that for a stadium, you know that's happening for all the stores next to the stadium.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to point this out right now, so that the people who are out there freaking out about this don't do something extremely stupid. The little card you get when you get vaccinated is a personal health record. It's a government form that you can print out yourself if you want it. I would always highly recommend when you go and get one of these vaccines that you ask for a duplicate of it for your personal records, because that's all it is, again, is a personal record. That way, if you want to have one like laminated to have it better, easier access and to keep it safe, you don't have to worry about screwing up getting a booster shot and then having that on the record. These cards are not irreplaceable. You can print it out on flimsy 8.5 by 11 standard printer paper, and if anybody starts asking for that as some sort of proof of something, that's invasion of your privacy. That is not acceptable.
Yeah, it's an out-and-out HIPAA violation for one, and for
it's never going to be the so-called vaccine passport.
Not that, but keep your eyes peeled and just be mindful because there are things that are being pushed for.
So, and also in terms of that, in that area, vaccine passports, actual vaccine passports have been a thing the entirety of last century. but that involves international travel. That has nothing to do with domestic travel, domestic interactions, any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's more
And
akin
that is
to
a
a
country's
legitimate
right,
passport.
as a country's absolute right to reject you from entering on the basis of something like this. Now, it turns out right now that only some countries still require you to get vaccinated, and presently for yellow fever. So if you look up the CDC's, hold on a second, I even have one like handy here. So it's the International Certificate of Vaccination or Prophylaxis, as approved by the World Health Organization. So it's also sometimes called the yellow card. It is maintain the form factor and so on. It's CDC 731, formerly PHS-731. So this is just a form that you use for international travel. You get a stamp on it. The IHR, or International Health Regulations of 2005, was the last update, and the last update in that came into force in 2016. That extended the yellow fever vaccine's period of validity from 10 years to lifetime. So this is something that is probably going to be used relatively soon. Since WHO is always slow on these things, it's probably going to be the next thing that countries are going to sign on to for international travel. They're probably going to ask that a COVID vaccine be included on that. And it is a country's right under the IHR to refuse entry to someone who has not met the vaccines listed by WHO, as approved by WHO, that they want required. So polio is another example of this. Smallpox, so yellow fever, obviously, meningitis. So there's a slew of these pandemics that have been controlled via the IHR and these ICVPs, or yellow cards. That's all perfectly reasonable. It's the country's right to refuse entry based on the conditions that it seeks to use. If sometimes they might be stupid.
Well, hold on, except for America. I mean, because it's not our right to refuse people entry for any reason.
Oh yeah, sure. Under Biden's rule, I'm sure that yellow cards will be burned. Except let's let it go to the goddamn drugstore.
Yeah, you'll need it to move state to state, but if you want to come here from somewhere else, no, it's fine. Unless you're coming legally, in which case you will.
In which case, fuck you, yes. Oh, goddamn. Now that is going to be such a day when my girlfriend comes here to hang out, and it's just going to be one giant fucking mess.
Well, just have her go to Canada and
she can come down from Canada.
Oh yeah, no, have her go to Cuba and just hop a boat up. That way it'll be a lot easier that way, and they'll give her some free money.
She sounds like such a goddamn Texas conservative talking about Venezuelans, man. It is hilarious. Oh boy. So these yellow cards are very much consistent with norms.
Yeah, they are a real thing currently, and
now this is why I get really pissed when they say vaccine passports and shit, because they're literally a thing, and then they're using this term to mean going to a fucking football stadium.
Well, there used to be a time when insurgent meant freedom fighter too, and now it doesn't. So that's just how things happen.
So now the digital certificate to replace these has been an idea that's been in the works for years. And the reason it's been in the works is because there's a big culture in Africa around these yellow cards and getting them forged to increase mobility. So people will go to a dock in the box over there, have them use their, quote, official stamp, because you need a stamp and a signature, and they will buy a vaccine stamp when they don't have any of the yellow fever vaccine available. So, and you can just look at the differential rates between the number of stamps that are present, the average number of stamps average number of times the stamps are used at these clinics, versus the average number of vaccines that are distributed, and there's a huge discrepancy. So fraud in Africa with the yellow fever vaccine is a huge problem. And that's the main legitimate impetus behind getting a digital certificate. You can look back at articles from the early 2000s, 2010s, as recent as 2018 and 2019, talking about these digital certificates to replace these pieces of paper. and none of them really got anywhere because it's really hard to do that in a way that is not necessarily centralized, but is still internationally accessible. People are kind of expecting that a lot of the stuff they do is digitized to make their transit between countries easier these days. This is all the reasoning behind it. Now, the part where it gets really annoying is that then you have the ability of potentially some private entity to require the use of some app for you to enter. This will disenfranchise a lot of people from normal, everyday social behaviors, or just living, going around town unmolested. Basically, you have a Fourth Amendment right there, and a Fifth Amendment right issue. Not Fourth Amendment, just Fifth Amendment, we can say. If the government building gets involved, then you're going to the Fourth. But Fifth Amendment issue, you're supposed to be free in your personal effects and your ability to travel.
Yeah.
So, having some leave ask for your app, this is going to be an issue. All these people who are talking about fucking voter IDs and how black people aren't able to get them because they're too stupid or whatever, are suddenly perfectly accepting of everybody having a fucking phone to get these digital certificates that they want to have people get.
Yeah, if you're not smart enough to figure out how to get to the DMV or remember the last four of your social, I mean, that's kind of asking a lot of somebody that you think isn't capable of that little. So, how exactly?
So don't ask for consistency from a Democrat or really a Republican. They're all fucking.
Well, not necessarily. Like, Republicans are kind of okay, and I don't know.
Actually, Republicans are consistently crappy at being Democrats. I'll say that. Republicans are consistently terrible Democrats.
Yeah. Rhinos especially, which, you got rhinos
it took
right?
a 90s Democrat to win against a shitty Democrat in 2016.
Indeed. And then again, but, we're not allowed to talk about that, so.
Right.
Anyway, that being what it is, I've got a link here to a DevX article about specifically what you're talking about here, people in Nigeria avoiding vaccinations by having fake cards. So if anybody wants to follow up on that, it is a big, big issue.
So again, this is to stop the spread of yellow fever, which is very bad. It's the same way COVID's not the fucking flu. This is not spotted fever.
Now, on that note, there was actually something you were wanting to talk about, which we have talked about before, and is, it's pretty much a perfect segue. The long COVID and some of the.
No, I hadn't peered too far into that article that I linked to you. I linked to you a Twitter event, so I could probably do better by looking at the actual article, and we should probably link the actual article. This is from
it's
the Sunday Times, which is a UK paper, so that's fine.
Yeah, I'll have the link to that right here for everybody.
Let's see, whatever, I agree to cookies and shit. I don't want to buy your fucking paper. Oh, but apparently I have to. Fuck these people. Anyway, I saw there, but there was someone did a screen cap of one thing in there. Let me find the screen cap. I have it saved this folder somewhere. Blah blah. I guess it's not JPEG. There.
Actually, the Twitter thread goes through most pretty good portion of the article. So
here's at least the picture I have from my archive
as well, so that. People don't want
but it's basically the short statistic that'll catch people's eye is that 1 in 7 people still report symptoms 12 weeks after an initial infection with COVID-19. That's 14.28 etc. %.
Yeah, that's pretty shockingly high.
So at just 12 weeks, that's 3 months. People are not healing from this very quickly, and they have these long-term persistent side effects of an infection already. I didn't see any breakdown, obviously, because I wasn't able to get past this access gate, A gate. Paywalls, by the way, are so fucking stupid as a market, as a economic tool. So 1 in 7 is a gigantic number. Like if a seventh, so there is a good example of this in history. Obviously, this is going to start implying things, but I can't remember who it was. There's a warlord who had won a battle with someone, and at the end, he was faced with a decision. He could kill his enemies, the enemies that were left. Instead, what he did with his captive, his captive army, he took the eye out of, what was it? It was to blind them and to leave every 100th person with one eye to lead them back home. And he crippled the enemy population because they had to take care of them for the rest of their life. Obviously, they're blind.
Oh, yeah.
So,
harsh.
If you then look at the world and how this spread around and so on, it activates the almonds there for a minute there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of does.
If 1 in 7 people has problems like this, that's a significant portion, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of functions in a way as
Yeah.
smaller caliber round might, as opposed to completely disabling.
Yeah, it's like nicking a femoral instead of putting a bullet through the carotid, huh?
Yeah,
So,
maybe.
no, I should go ahead and couch this with some sanity check. 1 in 7 people is a gigantic swath of the population of infected people. But, big buts here. 12 weeks is a relatively short amount of time. It's only 3 months. Fair enough. If we look at the longer term stuff, then I'm sure that drops off significantly. If we then say, okay, well, what does that count as? When they say they report symptoms after 12 weeks, this disease has been characterized by a gigantic swath of symptoms, huge spread of symptoms. So if you're talking about reporting at least one symptom 3 months out, you should almost expect that that's going to be a large portion of people. Now, that's what base reason might tell you. If you look at most other diseases where they resolve or don't resolve, like you gotta have either a short-term disease or a disease that carries on for a significant period of time. Most of them are not going to fall within the medium kind of gray area that this disease course has taken it. So, a cold or a flu is not going to last you 12 weeks, and you're certainly not going to be feeling any of the symptoms as a result of those diseases by 12 weeks.
Yeah, your worst flu is going to be like 3, maybe.
Right. So it's like, if you get a headache at week 12 after a flu infection, you're not going to go, oh, well, this is because of the flu.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Very much not going to be the case, right? So that should kind of bring in that's perspective from both directions here. We know that 1 in 7 is probably it's a shocking number, but it's kind of probably built to be that way.
Now, it could also be something just as little as you have a headache.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is it's characterized by a large spread of symptoms that are characteristic of other.
It's
other
not
issues.
all everybody can't have kids anymore. That's
right.
actually going to be a fairly low number, but that is a concern.
Right. So 1 in 7 is big. That's a headline number.
Yeah,
but we're talking about like 3 years from now.
You could say something about this too. Whereas a normal cold or flu, it's going to come and go. It's got for any RPG players out there, this has got a much bigger table of random effects than your standard cold or flu. We'll say you can end up with some really weird stuff.
So, and I know people who I routinely talk to. There's this one woman I know who she has peripheral neuralgia and peripheral myalgia for legs. That's based on nerve damage.
You're breaking up a bit.
I know tingling, almost like itchiness.
Oh, hey, you're breaking up.
Nerve damage. So we're breaking up.
Oh, there. We're back. Okay.
We're back.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
see it. Yeah, it had the little thing at the voice. Okay.
You,
So,
you said
um,
peripheral neuralgia?
yeah, so peripheral neuralgia and myalgia. So that's basically nerve pain.
Okay.
So nerve damage and nerve pain. So she has some sort of neuropathy in her legs. Um, she also is reported the same way another guy I know is reported that there's kind of like this almost like a skin itchiness that you get after the fact, and that's because of nerve damage. So this all goes back to what we were talking about, I think, before we got on, about how COVID causes the loss of sense of smell and taste. That's largely due to just general tissue inflammation that chokes off the signal, but some of that is due to nerve damage and the persistent um, loss of the sense of taste and smell. So this is called anosmia. After the disease is gone, is one of these like 1 in 7 things, but it's caused either by a permanence of nerve damage from the inflammation or due to infection causing cell death. Unfortunately, it's kind of really hard to tell which one of those it would be after the fact. One of those conditions, though, has a possible long-term progressive problem. That is, if you had nerve infection that propagated, and we know that this disease can propagate in the nerves, the virus does replicate in nerves. It can be something like, say, chickenpox or herpes, where it hangs out in your nerve cells for the rest of your life. That's a possibility. We just don't know yet.
We really
It's
don't.
not likely. It's not likely. It is still very difficult for a disease like this to cross the blood-brain barrier or to get into the nerves.
Well,
but we know that it will propagate in nerves.
yeah, it would have been said before that it would have been completely out of the realm of possibility, but it is absolutely not with COVID. We can see it, obviously.
Yeah. So the downside there, like I said, there's both of these possible things can cause permanent anosmia, but if it's viral propagation that caused it, it's possible that it's persistent and progressive, so that over the following years it could get worse. COVID could just come back spontaneously, etc., etc., etc. So herpes hangs out in nerves just underneath your eyes, next to your nose, and chickenpox hangs out next to your spine, about halfway down your back. So that's for life, basically. So we just don't know at this point because we haven't had people die, or you haven't had people subject themselves to biopsies to get this kind of information, and it's not really ethical at this point to suggest people to get that done because simply they haven't had the disease long enough for that to be a reason to come back to the doctor for a follow-up study or to suggest trials for it. Now, some of these might also be in trials already. They might be doing investigative trials, but I just don't know. I haven't kept up on all of them. There's a lot of shit going on with this pandemic.
Too true. And let us just say right now, rest in peace, a victim of not only chauvinism but COVID, George Floyd. We won't mention
that was a
fentanyl
clever
or
one. That was clever.
But, that is the world today. That is the world today.
Well, look, his lungs were 3 times the mass that they're supposed to be at autopsy, and they were turgid stiff.
Just like the Grinch, his lungs grew 3 times that day.
So it is no wonder that he had a hard time breathing, let alone the meth and fentanyl, etc., and possibly also potentially the knee on his back. I could easily see how that would make him feel like he could not breathe, and then with the heart acceleration from the arrest.
Oh yeah, having to deal with an arrest on top of just having a drug dealer shove a bunch of pills down your throat. Yeah, that's really gonna hype up a body,
And you should also keep in mind, like this guy was getting passed between precincts, Chauvin, getting passed between precincts.
Oh yeah, not to say that the guy's a saint or anything. But
he was getting passed around between precincts like a priest in the church. Like this guy would get in trouble from excessive use of force, and then they would do zero discipline and just pass him on. Like he had 12 or 18. I don't remember. It's somewhere in that range of complaints. He had double-digit complaints on his ass with no administrative action taken on the record.
Yeah, I'll tell
Like,
you
this guy
what.
should not have been a cop. Period.
I hate being put into the position of defending people I really don't like, but
This is
it
one of
keeps
them.
happening so fucking frequently these days.
Yeah.
It is absolutely exasperating. But yeah, I
This
mean,
guy is such a piece of shit.
it's like, damn it, I don't even like this guy. He's kind of an asshole, but
And the worst part is, you look at the description of him by his wife, and you're just like, how is this possible?
oh yeah,
Looking
dude's
at his
like
record.
5'3" or something too, right? And George Floyd's like giant, so I mean, he's not gonna be able to. He's not gonna do anything but like try and hold the guy
Oh,
down.
he has short man syndrome. That's
Okay, I might be wrong on the height, but I know he's not a big guy, and that George Floyd was
if he
a
has short
very
man
large dude.
syndrome, that explains how he could behave the way he did, or the way he does in general.
Oh, indeed it could. And by the way, there's a bit of breaking news, late breaking to say the least, but
Oh,
it's a picture from the Clinton era White House of a
oh yeah,
of
Ghislaine.
Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell just coming up and being all smiles and friendly like. So I'll make sure and put a
Yes,
link to that from
be sure to
disclose.tv.
spread that picture far and wide.
Yeah, do make sure and share that wherever you like. That
Add
has been.
Harambe in the background if you want.
Oh
I think that would
yeah,
be
yeah.
appropriate.
Rest in peace, Harambe. We lost a real king that day, and that's all I can say about that. It's a sad thing to think that
Hey man,
he
you
could
only had
he
incriminating
probably
evidence about a certain ex-president.
probably so either that or he knew something about COVID that he wasn't supposed to say.
Harambe was a test subject that escaped.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were just trying to hold it off. They couldn't let it happen too early.
Yeah, Harambe died for your sins. Praise him.
That's right. Rest in peace, Harambe. You deserved better.
Oh, holy shit, that's funny.
Oh, speaking of deserving better, I wonder, I don't know though, but maybe we do, maybe we don't. You had linked me up to this, and I've heard about it in a couple different places, about the
Uh-oh.
U.S. Postal Service being
Yes.
not only shitty, but shitty on a whole nother level. This is
So
actually
these
out of the
motherfuckers,
Washington Examiner. I'll put a
these
link to that. But yeah,
these sad sacks of shit, these complete wastes of human flesh that are bitching year after year about how they can't balance their fucking budget, had enough money and enough personnel left over to pay people to stalk your social media and report your ass to the feds, the other feds, over a period of years. These assholes who can't keep the balance sheet, they can't keep the budget sheet balanced. They're sitting there checking you out and seeing what you're doing about protests and whatnot, so they can alert the other authorities, the FBI, NSA, and others, to come and take a look at you, ATF and DHS. They're basically pick a three-letter agency. They're sending off details if you have protests. And of course, this is an agency that has a partisan bias to it,
oh, only just a little.
just a little bit. So it makes you kind of wonder here if any of these same motherfuckers were involved in the shit that was going on with the U.S. Post Office last year. Now that's personal speculation, but just like going by the story there, what a just the tax dollar part of it alone. Just fire all these social media people. What the fuck are these guys doing? Not delivering mail. Like,
Yeah,
how
if
did
they're
that
not
even get
delivering or
started?
sorting it, then unless they're advertising for the USPS, then I see no
I'm
real
just
need
wondering,
for
like,
it.
how the fuck did that even get started in the post office? Was it like a social media manager went, I can do more? Fuck these people. Wide scale spying on Americans again, and I get it. It's public social media shit. Fine. You're there to deliver my mail. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I want from the post office. Deliver my fucking mail, and then shut up and go away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind being friendly with the mailman when he comes. I
Yeah,
don't
I'd
mind that
love
at all.
that. I'd love to be friendly with the mailman. I'd also love for him to not be sitting there staring at the exorbitantly shitty Twitter I have, spying around, counting up how many times I say shit, piss, and fuck.
Yeah, yeah. You know, he doesn't need to know when I'm posting a crab dance about I don't know, something hilarious that happened.
Yeah, there you go. Every time I post a muffin button or a tweet full of crabs, I have one of these assholes staring at it. Seriously though, like, what the fuck is the post office doing on Twitter and Facebook and whatever? Not just like advertising stamps. Why the fuck are they looking to see what we're writing on there?
That's a good question.
Looking at protests. Like, what the hell is this going to have to do with you? Is it going to affect your ability to deliver mail? Like, that's the only reason I could see you caring. Unless you have some other purpose behind it. And if it has to do with national security, the only people who should care about that are people in charge of that shit.
Yeah, so basically, you don't need to be doing this unless they've come down to you and told you. Now, if they've come down to you and told you, then maybe we should be aware of that.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good thing to know.
But like, how the fuck did that part of them get started? How the hell did that get started? Who came in? I
can really believe that's an Obama holdover. I really can believe that. I mean, a whole lot of those did a whole lot of keeping things from getting better.
Like, how many people do you need to do the same exact task with the same exact authority? Like, it is so mind blowing. Like, the thing that really gets me is they come out every fucking year and say, "We need more money from Congress." And these assholes, every time they get an extra dollar in their budget, they seem to spend $5. And This is the kind of shit that comes out. If they cut this out, I bet you it would have gotten rid of their imbalance from last time.
Yeah, it's a notoriously out of balance organization.
They made the best case for privatization ever with that action, by saying we're going to stock social media. Fuck these people.
Yeah, I don't even want Jack looking at what I post on Twitter.
I think that I don't care. Like, if I'm putting this shit out on Twitter and it's in public, I still think that the government should get a fucking warrant for it at this point.
Yeah, considering the way they've lately been treating anything involving social media, yeah, I'd be more than happy to make that agreement.
Like, it's not a plain sight officer thing anymore. You're supposed to be delivering the mail. I can see, like, if I'm lighting my neighbor's mailbox on fire in front of the post office guy, yeah, if the mailman should be on the phone at that moment, calling 911, getting my ass arrested.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
But if you're on Twitter, has nothing to do with delivering mail. Nothing to do with it. In fact, I'd be happy if every federal agency didn't have communication on social media. If you had to go to their website in order to figure out what's going on.
I'd
be much happier if you had to use official channels only.
I mean, I would take the trade-off of no longer being able to tag the ATF and the FBI on Twitter.
Yeah, if I had to go to their website forum and tell them to fuck off there, I'd be much happier to do that.
I mean, I'd be glad to go to a government website and tell them to fuck off. I'll be happy to tell them to fuck off wherever I need to, but, you know. It is what it is. Damn.
Yeah, that had me spitting foam, man.
Well, I want to say on a related note, but it's kind of not. But it's
on a related note.
No, it's really not a related note, but it will make you mad. There was a where was this? Was it in Columbus? The stabbing that got averted.
Which stabbing?
Oh, the one that didn't happen.
Right.
So I think that was Columbus.
Maybe.
Oh shit! I'm gonna actually have to look.
Well, you know, it happens all the time. Remember?
Oh right. Oh yeah, that's right. When that went.
King James told us this shit. It happens all the time. He could have just fired a taser, man.
Alrighty, so there was a was it Chicago? Valerie Jarrett. Yeah, I had a response to her when she
oh man, that
put this
cunt.
out. She's something else. She is really something else.
Yeah, and if you say anything bad about her, don't forget she's gonna tell you that she's black.
And I'll be honest, I mean, she is not that black looking a lady, so I can kind of
You know,
understand where Roseanne was
I
coming from.
can, I can see how that would be just kind of in itself a thing that she would get, and I could say that that would be called racist. Be like, oh, you mean you're black? It's kind of like the oh, you don't look Jewish thing. I can go ahead and say, okay, you know what, fine, you can have that, but that's not like a reason to never get criticism.
Oh no, I mean, there's plenty to criticize over, but that in particular is kind of bullshit, and certainly bullshit to cancel an up and coming show. But hey, you can't really have your opposition, making what's the term I'm looking for? Making inroads
Logical
into
difference.
modern media. Better to have them completely shut out and out in the dark, as it were.
Yeah.
So anyway, Valerie Jarrett was saying something about I can't remember her exact words. I'd have to look up my exact reply too, but it was something along the lines of the knife fights are a normal part of
Well, there's several people that said this shit.
it's really something else. So
Like
basically, I keep looking. Where the hell did this happen?
it's kind of like there was this one person who was I guess trying to be somewhat of a trans advocate, saying that they used birth control all the time back in her high school in the 90s. Sorry, not birth control, puberty blockers all the time. It's like, yeah, for precocious puberty, not for trannies.
All right. So where did this occur? I swear I'm having the worst trouble finding information about this. Go figure. I'm having a lot of trouble
But
finding
Makita,
information about this. Yeah.
are we talking about Makita Bryant?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Maybe we
it
should
was.
try.
I was right. It was Columbus. I was just trying to double check, but it's so hard to get any good information about this. It isn't completely skewed.
Well, it's because there's
Surprise,
stabbings
surprise.
all over the place. Hadn't you heard?
Oh, right. Yeah, it happens all the time. There were just 3 down the road, I'm sure, that I just didn't hear about. So, yeah, the backstory on this, for anyone that missed that part of it, which it has also not gotten a lot of back reporting, apparently this one girl had threatened some members of this girl's family, maybe her grandmother or something, the girl in the pink in the video that everyone's seen. And so she called the police and said that she had been threatened by someone who was saying she was going to stab her, and that they may have stabbed her grandmother or aunt or something. That was not
A
clear
knife was
early on.
involved.
It seems, again, it's hard to get a lot of extra information about this because it's not really well reported. It seems that no one else was stabbed or cut. So all we can do is fast forward to the video that we have. This girl has. Oh, we should actually go back to the call where she says she's going to stab her, and then in the video you can hear that girl, so it can be easily identified who's who by just the available records that have already been released. So we have the girl in the pink who has called for the police to protect her. Shortly thereafter, which amazingly enough, a cop arrives in time. Which I'll just say this: it's an old saying, but it's true. When seconds count, cops are minutes away.
Yeah, that's one of those things where that whole idea of you don't need a gun, why do you need an AK-47? Why do you need an AR-15?
You
All
are
all
your
that shit.
own first responder, and that's the
Yeah,
harsh truth of the world. So embrace
seconds
the
matter,
human right to self-defense.
and a cop is not always going to have a sub 5 minute response time.
No,
Anybody who lives outside of the city limits is instantly going to be able to tell you it's like a 15-minute response time.
yeah, no. This girl, she got
Yeah,
she
fucking
got
lucky.
lucky on a whole lot of different levels, and we'll go ahead and just kind of break that down. So we'll go with things as we see them from another video that was released earlier, in which we see that girl shout, "I'ma stab you." I believe it was "I'ma stab you, bitch." I could
Yeah,
be
I'm a
misquoted.
savvy bitch.
And
And she was
then,
getting up with the dad coming over and kicking the other girl in the head.
yeah, the dad's over there kicking somebody else in the head. The girl first slashes at another one of her friends, another one of the girl in pink's friends, and then charges at the girl in pink. She has the knife cocked back, and it's very close. And then the girl gets lucky again because the cop is not only quick to act, he is an ace shot. He puts a
Yeah.
couple of bullets
This is
into
a
this girl.
former Army sniper or something, right?
I legitimately don't know any of his backstory. All I know is that the man is a crack shot. He doesn't put one bullet off target. He gets him into a fast moving target that has on video already attacked one person. In the audio from before, it's alleged she has attacked or has stabbed someone else, and then she is instants away from stabbing this girl in pink.
Yeah.
And she gets put down. Sadly enough, yeah. If that was my kid, I wouldn't want that to happen to her. I'd want him to have some other option. But the thing
if
is,
my kid's about to get stabbed, shoot the other kid.
Yeah.
Just for any cops listening, just shoot the other kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Even
no taser, no nothing. Just center mass, put him down like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah. There's one person that thinks that girl shouldn't have got shot, and that's her mom. And everybody else thinks, well, you got to do what you got to do. And well, you got to do what you got to do because there's 2 lives involved, maybe 3, but we can verify that there were 2 people who were in imminent danger from that girl. Not to mention, maybe the one on the ground that her dad was beaten down. What might she have done to that one? So maybe 3, maybe 4. So this cop, he shoots the girl center mass a couple times. She falls, and they are not able to save her.
Yeah.
It's a real shame. A life lost to madness and crime, as is often the way in the ghetto.
It's a terrible choice. But it's a choice that had to be made. One was going to get basically killed that day.
Yeah, somebody was going to die. It's a question of how many. In this case, the choice was 1 instead of many, which I understand. If you look at the way the girl in pink
recoiled, she was going to get stabbed in the neck.
She was going to get stabbed somewhere.
She was gonna it was gonna be somewhere around her left clavicle or her neck. She was gonna get stabbed in a really bad place to get stabbed.
And that girl had a lot of momentum, so that knife was gonna get buried to the hilt. And it
wasn't like a pen knife. It was
it wasn't a little Victorinox. It was like a butcher knife, right?
It looked to me like a decent sized pocket knife, like a 3.5 incher, but it could have been.
No. From the video I've seen, it looks like your average folder,
like a steak knife.
Yeah, like something that size, like maybe about the size of a K-bar. Honestly.
Okay. K-bar, that would be some bad news bears if that got buried in you.
Oh no, that'd
with her mass and her momentum, that was going in.
Yeah, well, it looked like it was about that size and that scale. So, yeah, I mean that's.
I just assumed she was short. Would give the way that with her height versus the car.
Could very well be. So I think this one's. I don't think a lot's going to happen with this because we had some. We had a lot of people catch a lot of flack from this, like Valerie Jarrett. Well, we've got a lot of people saying shoot somebody in the legs, shoot them in the arm, be like RoboCop and shoot.
Okay, shooting him in the leg and the arm is going to cause him to bleed out and die anyway. Just put that out there right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, they could probably get saved at the hospital, etc. But you're trained to shoot center of mass because you're going to hit them, not because you're going to be a marksman. It's not like this guy picked which ribs he was going to put the bullet between. He was going for center of mass, and he hit center of mass.
Yeah, he was faced with a difficult choice, and he made the right decision.
And every one of these fucking communists out there sitting there saying, oh, but you could have shot her in the leg, or, shoot her in the toe, or use a taser.
And
it's just good fucking luck, buddy, shooting someone in the knee at that range, at that speed, on the draw. Just good fucking luck.
But, on that, somebody brought up an interesting and kind of uncomfortable question, which I actually have an answer for, and I'm not uncomfortable saying. they said, all right, now change the situation with it's in a white neighborhood and
Uh-huh.
it's a uh, Chinese soldier that does the same thing. Well, I
Okay.
got to be honest.
Kill
I
the
don't.
kid with
I don't
the
really
knife.
have a problem. I mean, you saved more lives. If you're not here,
Kill the kid with the knife. That's the answer.
it's yeah, yeah. I mean,
Well, I mean, let's
it
not even
is an
say like that.
uncomfortable
It's not
position
kill
to
the kid with
be
a
in.
knife. It's disable them. I won't even say it as like you're intending to kill them. It's shoot the kid with a knife.
Yeah, it
If
really.
they die after that when you're trying to render aid, it's way worse. Like, the hope is that you shoot them and disable them, and then you save them after the fact. But like, if they're imminently threatening someone else's life, they're the one to shoot.
Now let me just go ahead and post face that with I have no desire to see any Chinese troops on American soil, and there's a very good chance that some of the things that have found their way into lake bottoms would find their way off of lake bottoms in such a situation. Who knows? There's a lot of people that go boating and have accidents. Maybe they'll learn to scuba. Who knows?
Hey man, if it's functional and you can sell it to the ATF, only sell the blower.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, pick up an Ender 3D. They're great. An Ender 3, I should say. 3D printer. Great
That's
piece of
great.
kit.
I enjoy my Printerbot Simple Metal, or Printerbot Metal.
Yeah, or if you
It's
want to
the
wait,
metal.
there are some interesting things happening in metal printing,
Yeah.
and that's going to be a
SLS, if
complete
you can
game
get your
changer.
hands on SLS, is SLS printers will range you from 5 to 15 grand on average, but they are also well worth it. They will make you back that cost over time if you're in a shop by having functional prototypes and custom parts that are rapidly producible.
Yeah, you'll be able to.
Metallized powder is not that hard to get. You can also print in ceramics and mixed metals and all kinds of shit.
Yeah, you can do some really, really interesting stuff right now. If there are
Just,
any people that run shops that happen to catch this and you're
just
thinking about picking one up, if you've got it in your budget, just
yeah.
think about what you can do with one-offs that you're not going to have to figure out any kind of machining for. You can just do a
Charge the same
crazy
price.
one-off.
Charge the same price, print out like 3 of them to make sure the customer's happy, and then send them on their way with 2.
Yeah, if you've got something particularly nice, put it in the
The way
display
you
case.
print these things, you can even you don't have to do a whole lot of surface finishing either. Like just some basic sanding will get you to where you need to be.
And not to mention the really
Sandblast.
amazing and innovative things you can do with internal structures,
Oh yeah.
skeletonized and all that.
Also, so like overhangs, which are a problem in FDM or fused filament fabrication. So your standard 3D printer that you might think of, those overhangs, you don't have to worry about like making sure everything's above 60 degrees or whatever. You can do ridiculous overhangs in SLS printing and not have an issue because it's all powder embedded the entire time.
Yeah, so it's basically got its own support structure, you could say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that being said, buy a 3D printer. It's they're going to be more and more important and more worth your time as time goes on. Now they might not be as we've talked before with Steve. We've talked offline, I should say. I don't know if we've had the conversation on here, but they're not exactly monetizable. Which isn't entirely true, but they're just too small scale for something like a shop, like an FDM printer. But SLS is kind of a different thing.
So SLS is, I would say, is decently scalable. FDM printers, FDM
There's
slash
only
FFF.
kind of so much you can do there,
Well,
unless you've got something big
you can follow rep principle and basically use them to make more printers so that you have scalable enterprise, or you can just make a bigger printer akin to the BAM printer at ORNL, although that scale's probably going to be too large for anyone's normal budget. That's the BAM printer was it the big area whatever. It's got a full size like decent extruder, like a normal sized lab extruder suspended on the gantry, and it's a big ass 3D printer. It prints out 6mm roads, and they're 3D printed cars that it made. I was one at the 2015 Antec I have a picture of from the Sabic
Well, that's pretty dope.
exhibit. Yeah, and then I went and I actually visited this lab in Knoxville, and I got to see the BAM printer up close. And there was a Humvee, and I can't remember the other car. It was a little buggy that were 3D printed vehicles that were hanging out there in the main area. I got to go and walk onto the platform and check out the extruder, and it was really cool. They had, and the cool thing was, in that same building, they had their lithium battery research facility, and that entire room is kept below 1% moisture. The people in there have to wear.
Since we're on the note of that, for anybody that's doing any 3D printing that's listening now, it's going to be worth your while to try and find some kind of drying box.
Yes, it can be a plastic bag, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, you can just throw some silica gel desiccant in a vacuum sealed bag, but there are products out there that that specifically heat and dehumidify.
They're called vacuum ovens, and so these are very typically used in labs. You can actually go on eBay, and whenever a lab moves or whatever, they'll be surplused, and just look for a used vacuum oven. Usually, they're not going to have much residues or whatever inside them, but you also usually need to get your own pump, a vacuum pump. So you need to get yourself oil diffusion pump, and those will get really good vacuums on them. You can pull down to less than 1 torr, less than 1 inch of mercury, torr being a millimeter of mercury. So less than an inch of mercury is good. There's 31 point whatever in an atmosphere of them. So that's good. And they'll heat up to whatever you need them to be, and they'll hold that for forever. What I would do, I've had to routinely, I did work with polyethylene oxide, and that is by itself a fantastic desiccant, which sucks because I have to keep it dry in order to use it for the experimental work I was doing. That stuff, I would basically just dry it out by putting a cup of calcium chloride into a red Solo cup full of calcium chloride into a plastic bag with it, and just leaving enough air in there for a diffusion to happen over time for a week, and that would bone dry the PEO. But that stuff you can get really cheap as a pool additive. It won't be pure. It'll be 85% or whatever, I think was the grade I got, but it was dirt cheap. The rest of it's going to be calcium carbonate or phosphate or whatever. But the calcium chloride is the important part there, or get silica gel and then bake that to reuse it. Same effect, or was it A3 is the zeolite you can get, the molecular sieves. I think A3 is the size. You can look it up on eBay, molecular sieve for water, and there'll be people selling those. Those work better than silica gel. But all these will take time. Baking stuff out is definitely going to be faster. Just make sure you watch your temperatures, because you can easily fuck up your whole roll at once.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that sucks.
We should really do an episode on home chemistry and that sort of thing too, at some point, because it's a genuinely interesting concept, and also something that's probably going to be worth knowing. There's somebody I'd like to get on. It goes by the name of Cathode on Twitter, and he's kind of a Chinese dissident that's trying to get citizenship here, and a big Second Amendment activist, and working in the defense distributed scene. He's working on making, I think, DIY primers, good ones.
So primers.
Cathode the Fox, I believe.
Yeah. So your fulminates are going to be big for primers, but you have to be careful, because if you fuck up the preparation of a fulminate, you sensitize it. If it remains acidic, after it's made, then they get real sensitive, like silver fulminate sensitive. That's a very very thin coating of silver fulminate is what's on in pop rocks. It's just sand with a very very small amount of silver fulminate.
Hmm.
And so mercury fulminate was used for a long time in primer caps, but then I can't remember what they switched to. Was it like in the 80s or whatever they switched out? But
They
it used to,
switched.
be
Well,
like mercury fulminate.
they did fulminated mercury
Yeah,
originally, and then they switched to a lead, and have since switched to
that sounds about
something
right.
else that is because the fulminated mercury, I believe, is was that there's one that they used that was corrosive to the brass, and then they switched to
Well, silver. Sorry, so mercury fulminate is going to be corrosive to a lot of things, and it's also mercury, which is terrible for you.
yeah, I think the fulminated mercury was the original, and I
Yeah,
think that makes the brass brittle. Then they switched to the lead, which uh,
which coats the inside and makes it dirty as fuck.
well, not only makes it dirty, it also it can corrode an untreated barrel.
You can.
So now they use a non-corrosive, non-mercury based form, but the
Yeah. I mean, you could also use like some other sensitive primary explosives.
yeah, there's any number of ways, and there's actually some really interesting work
The
being done in
problem
the
is that
DIY scene there.
making some of these making some of the sensitized. So you'd have to make desensitized versions of them because they're just too sensitive for use in a bullet. But like some of these sensitive primary explosives that you can make to make for primer caps, you should also just not make at home because not only is it illegal to do so, they also put you on a terror watch list.
Yeah, there's a lot of things
For
that you might order that you would find
like ammonia,
yourself.
like acetone peroxide is a really bad idea um, to make at home.
Now, that said, there is a lot you actually can do at home, and it is perfectly legal for you to do so. And
Yes.
as a matter of note, when we do get into discussing this, just so that you know, here in the States, it's perfectly legal to make your own bullets. You can, in most states,
Oh yeah.
make your own fireworks. Now, some states you can't, so do check your local regulations on this.
Here's the other thing: if even if your purpose is legal and your actions are legal, if you have items in your home which could be used to make something illegal, and you get like an ATF raid or whatever,
Yeah, they're going
they
to
will
frame
try to make
everything
the
as
case.
bad as they can.
They will make the case. Like so, a good example of this. I can't remember the story, but like which story it was. But like a guy had pool bleach in his laundry room, or sorry, not pool bleach. He had regular bleach in his laundry room. He had ammonia in his cleaning, like his garage or his cleaning section. He had a couple other cleaners there, and he had some fertilizer because he had a little garden. And he of course had oil because he changed his own oil in his car. And it was the attempt was made to make him out to be a terrorist because he had in just that combination a handful of items enough to make several different very nasty explosive combinations, which could do a fuck ton of damage. And he had the kind of quantities you would find in a home for a person who was buying things conservatively, but at cost competitive prices. So, like you'd buy a 50-pound bag of fertilizer to fertilize a garden, for example. And he had a like a 5-gallon can of oil instead of one of those little quart bottles. So, shit like this will be used to make you out to be a terrorist, or can be used to make you out to be a terrorist. But it's perfectly normal in a normal home to have these kind of items.
So you can kind of see why there's a little bit of a push to get rid of cash. So don't let cash go away. It's
Yeah, there's that.
kind of important, and it allows you to just make purchases that can't really be tracked, even if they're completely innocuous purchases.
Well, here's the other thing. Even if cash goes away, there needs to be a truly fungible form of purchasing.
Well, there's always barter.
So there's barter. with certain cryptocurrencies, for example, as model currencies, the fungibility can be guaranteed in certain by certain mechanisms within that can be built into the protocol, so that any one monetary unit is equivalent in the eyes of a consumer and supplier as any other monetary unit. So for $1, this is really straightforward. Even though each one of them has a serial number on it, any $1 is equivalent to another dollar as far as your purposes for buying and selling things. And there's no way to directly tie your coming and going to the serial numbers that are present on those dollar bills. So you can have uniquely marked items that are still fungible in this way.
Yeah, they would just need a way of being transferred that allows for anonymity.
Right. So, like I said, there's ways you can build that kind of mechanism into cryptocurrencies, which
we can say right away that anything that's going to be government sponsored is going to have such things absolutely left out of it.
Yes, that's one of the major reasons why whatever I can't remember her fucking name right now. Was it Janet Yellen? The one that failed upwards to now be in charge of the Treasury Department, which just so conveniently happens to have its own blockchain shit that it's trying to figure out at the same time that it's decrying the power usage of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. So, by the way, for Ethereum, that's going away really soon when the F2 protocol finishes its service updates and goes completely main network, which it's already on mainnet, but it hasn't turned Ethereum into an F2 shard chain yet. When that happens, though, the proof of work part of Ethereum goes away, and proof of stake is way more efficient already.
Well, that's actually a really important topic. So why don't you explain that a little bit? Because I don't know if I have exactly the verbiage to make it make sense.
All right. So proof of work is the basic idea of like Bitcoin, where you have a block of incoming transactions that you've turned into the beginning of a hash, and you have to add something to that called the nonce to get the output of a hash algorithm to give you a certain number of zeros at the beginning of the number of the output for the hash. So that is something that is by the nature of the hash function really hard to predict. So you don't predict, you just brute force it. That's what takes so much power, is every time you try to do that hash and you adjust the nonce to try to get more zeros at the beginning, the number of zeros at the beginning of the number of the output number is the difficulty of the hashing rate, or of the block, whatever. So the difficulty is the number of zeros you want at the beginning. So you're basically constraining the output value of a function that's supposed to produce something that is fundamentally random, even though it's not really random. It's supposed to look fundamentally random. So it's really hard to get that without just guessing. So that's what everyone does, just guesses. So it takes thousands, billions of these attempts to get the number of zeros at the beginning that you want.
And so that's running out of those, basically, too, which is why it grows exponentially harder and harder, and
so
more has to be
that's proof of work. And proof of work is a straightforward paradigm, but it's not without its faults. Namely, as difficulty goes up and the number of transactions you want to do goes up, the amount of these hashes you have to do, these attempts you have to do to get the right number of zeros goes up really fast. So Bitcoin was never designed to be the cryptocurrency. It was really a proof of concept for blockchain technology. That was the gold egg that came out of this, was the blockchain, not Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a proof of concept. It was an experiment, and it remains that way. And eventually, it will no longer be the poster child. Ethereum was built on top of that after Litecoin and Feathercoin and a few other attempts to do things differently. That uses the script algorithm, which is another form of hashing. It's the same kind of idea. The idea was to overcome the use of application-specific integrated circuits, so ASICs, that can do things like hashing way, way faster than a CPU or a GPU. So script overcomes that by not being able to do as much of that so simply, but there are ASICs that can do script anyway. So that was only a small delay. So proof of work is energy intensive. Proof of stake is a different thing. So with proof of stake, you commit your resources to a node that kind of signs off on transactions. So imagine just reducing the difficulty like way down so that there's only a couple of leading zeros or whatever, and that being the way it's run instead of having a huge difficulty to prevent certain scaling issues. So with proof of stake, you have to have people commit their cryptocurrency to a stakeholder that signs off on things. So the same way a Bitcoin node that does the mining signs off on the next block in the chain, the stakeholders will sign off on the next block in the chain using the signatures of committed currency as the proof of a block being part of the chain. So the same consensus algorithms and so on are all kind of in play here, but the way that the block is signed off on in a secure manner by consensus of the network is adjusted. So instead of everybody doing the same hash to get there, everybody can go back and say the same, these coins that existed on the chain already were already committed to this particular node. This one signed off on it, and several other nodes signed off on it since. Therefore, it's secure. So I know it sounds kind of complicated and convoluted there, but the idea is that you don't have to do all these extra hashes. You just have like one person sign off on it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you've got kind of a three-way handshake just to ensure that whatever thing
it's kind of like that
to say is.
Imagine this. So you have a three-way handshake, you have two big hands, and then you have one hand made up out of potentially thousands of little hands.
All right.
Which all come from the arms of either side. I know it's kind of weird in that way, because.
So I guess the one thing I'm kind of missing here is
that are already on the chain that commit their coin.
Where does that initial Ethereum thing come from? Where does that coin itself originate?
Okay, so you have with these different cryptocurrencies, usually we'll have what's called an initial coin offering. So this is very much like an initial public offering for stocks. It's almost identical in an analogy here. So an initial coin offering is where you will buy in to get the initial coins that are dispersed when the main net comes online. And within the first one or two blocks, this disbursement happens to everybody who's bought kind of their promise of getting coins once the main net launches. So I actually bought in with Ethereum in their ICO, and I got some out of that. And that was great. After a number of years, it paid off big time. So that was fantastic. Usually that comes with the catch of having to pay money or some other kind of cryptocurrency in to kind of boost the project and give it the resources it needs to guarantee the mainnet launch. An example of how low that can go in terms of the barrier to entry, and I'm partly doing this out of purely selfish motivations here, but the Pi network thing I've preached to you before. That is also an ICO that's going on. But the difference is the barrier to entry is getting in every day and then tapping a thing that says you're a human and maybe seeing an ad if you didn't turn them off for 2 weeks. Which, if you look at other ICOs where you have to pay in I think I ended up putting in a Bitcoin for like 1,000 Ether, which at the time was a pretty significant investment, which it paid off well, but I didn't, you can't predict how well these are going to pay off.
You really can't.
So the big difference between, say, Ethereum, which is based on proof of work, and Ethereum 2, or F2, is F2 is based on proof of stake.
Well, that's okay. So this does require then that something be put in a value ahead of time. It's not actually creating it out of.
So here's the thing about F2.
Kind of the way that Bitcoin does.
F2, you can so the way that F2 is going to build in ahead of time here. These tokens are going to, so the Ethereum block, so you can build other things on top of Ethereum using smart contracts. Oh, fuck me, I forgot this ad. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm sitting there talking about Pi. I'm like, I need to go press the button today. So Ethereum itself is going to continue existing as a chain. You can build things on top of Ethereum using smart contracts. That was its kind of major quantum leap in technology, was having these automated functions which are paid for in processing power by the very nature of mining the next block on the chain. So when you get the next block, a series of these smart contract execution events are built into the block itself. So that's all well and good. You can build other currencies on top of, or other cryptos on top of Ethereum, which is, there's a vast swath of these altcoins.
So I guess the best way maybe to describe that is then it's in its own way a kind of commodity.
We can think of it as like branches almost. But
no.
top.
No. I mean, in a specifically monetary sense, it's akin to a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, whoa, hold on a minute. God damn it.
Still alive?
Sorry, some scotch made its way down the wrong pipe there.
Oh, no problem. That happens.
God damn it, that is so stupid every time that shit happens. So anyway, yeah, you can think of it as kind of like different commodities on the same basis blockchain. So the way this is going to be extended in with F2 is that F2 is going to introduce the idea of sharded chains. So these are like side branches of the main chain that are going to be based off of the same proof of stake as the main blockchain. So what's going to happen with Ethereum is it's going to get a hard fork. It's kind of a soft fork because it's not really, no one's going to. So you can continue making Ethereum blocks and make it like a different branch on it. So the same way Ethereum Classic, it kind of came out of a hard fork in Ethereum. You might get like a Ethereum Classic 2, which is just Ethereum as we know it today. But the main Ethereum network is going to switch over to being a shard chain on Ethereum 2's mainline backbone chain. So eventually the Ethereum proof of work is going to become proof of stake. And everybody knows this is coming, and nothing is going to be a major change. Everybody who's using Ethereum as like a commodity right now is not going to notice a big difference. In fact, if anything, at the end of the day, if there's a hard fork and you end up with two currencies at the end of this, you're going to end up with doubling of your coin units, and then one of them is going to have a value that you're just going to suddenly have available to you to sell. So when that date comes up, you're probably going to want to load up on your Ethereum like right there and then be ready to sell off, whichever one you feel is going to be less worth your time afterwards to recoup the investment. But I'm not a financial advisor, so take that with a grain of salt as you will.
Right, of course.
But yeah, so the cool thing is going to be that you're going to have this ability to make these shard chains, which is kind of like making your own Ethereum chain that you can build other things on top of. And it's going to unify certain other things into the backbone as shard chains, which is going to be really interesting to watch. What's going to be even more interesting is going to be to see who stays with the proof of work model after this kind of mechanism comes into play, because the fact that it's able to dynamically, via the governance mechanisms built into the smart contracts, perform this kind of complicated procedure to move everything over from one chain to the other is pretty spectacular, because it was never really designed to do that. So it's just showing a very unique form of extensibility that's just present as a basic function of Ethereum as a blockchain.
So it sounds like it's going to be tremendously more efficient.
Yeah. So,
and also, if I'm understanding this correctly, this proof of stake is also essentially the same model that the NFTs I'm hearing about are working on?
So NFTs are built on top of other blockchains, basically. Most NFTs you run into are based on Ethereum. So an NFT is based on a particular type of smart contract. By the way, you can write whatever smart contract you want, but NFTs will follow a standard that has been used kind of currency wide. In order to use, so NFTs arose from these standards. There's ERCs, so ERC what was it ERC 20s and ERC 750s or 751 or whatever the hell it is. Like a ERC 1150 something or 1180. But these are standard types of non-fungible tokens. So I talked about fungibility earlier. That's the same idea where any dollar is equal to any other dollar. But like, say you turned Pokemon into NFTs. If I traded, my my Pikachu for your Charizard, they're not 1-to-1 equivalent anymore, right? Because one's a Pikachu, one's a Charizard.
Sure.
So, if you only produce one NFT per Pokemon, period, then that is the sum total of those NFTs that exists. You can do that with these smart contracts using the NFT standards. So, this nice thing about these standards is they're a way for you to get these NFTs recognized on all these different distributed platforms, these dApps that exist as marketplaces, like OpenSea. You have so are a couple other ones. There's Rarible. There's Mintable. There's a shit ton of them. So the thing about these NFTs is they can be in like their own little series. You can make them unique NFTs, like I was just talking about with, like, say, the Pokemon, or imagine, say, you're able to make there's only going to be 20 Pikachus in existence, period. Then that's another kind of NFT where you can have multiple copies of the same NFT, but you can limit the supply. So this is great for artists, and it can be used to do things like digital ticket sales.
Yeah, I actually have intention of releasing some art via NFT.
Yeah. So the thing is, at the end of the day, just like, say, with Bitcoin, it exists. It's a number that you own, just by virtue of the fact that you know a private key. You have some secret value that allows you to spend the value on the public blockchain. That allows you to make a signature that says, I authorize this. So by virtue of having that private key, the NFTs that are assigned to your address, so those are, again, just a number, are made valuable by what you do with them. So the art thing is an example of this. Making that value, that whatever value, some form of coupon, where you have to quote, spend that value to assign that NFT to another address that might represent, say, a business. That might be a way for you to get entry into an event. So if they hand out tickets as NFTs and you show up and they say, okay, transfer the NFT to this address representing the ticket office in order to get entrance, and then they'll send you, say, another NFT as a ripped ticket stub. That's a very simple use case, and the fact that you own the private key means you can sign any kind of digital prompt to say, are you the owner? So they can give you a barcode at the entrance to a theater.
Well, not only that, it would also be fully transferable.
Right, yeah, it's also fully transferable. But if you can't give the correct digital signature to a prompt, like as a QR code that you scan in, like you would say, scan a QR code with your phone, it would then pop up on the screen a QR code representing the prompt having your digital signature attached to it, and then let the scan the barcode up top, and put your phone underneath with where the scanner is, have it scan your barcode as the return on that message, and then be able to get entrance, or have it tell you that it's the wrong one. And yeah, you're absolutely right. So that's actually funny. You can make it non-transferable, but nobody in their right mind would make it non-transferable. And I think it's on Rarible, you can see that option.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of defeats the whole purpose. But
well, it doesn't quite. So it can make it so that if you're assigned an NFT, you've got it for life. but only on that one address. So that's another thing that's really important for people to remember is there's no forgiveness in these technologies. Once you fuck up and you lose if you lose your private key, like there's really not any going back.
Yeah, you lose your wallet, nobody's going to find it because these encryption keys are.
Yeah. And I stupidly would have lost, um, so that Ethereum that I got in the ICO I mentioned.
Yeah.
I lost the password to that JSON file for a few years.
Oh man.
And so I went back and I found that shit again in the least likely goddamn place, and that was huge.
I would say
that.
so.
Okay, so it's ERC 1155 is the multi-token, multi-NFT thing. So that allows you to make like a whole family of individual families of NFTs consistently. So that's a way that you can like make a game and have NFTs for say the Pokemon, and then have NFTs for the items you use in the Pokemon, and have NFTs for the NPCs you can interact with. Shit like that.
Well, so you know, something else this could be really innovative in is online gaming, where there has always been this kind of underground market for items and all that.
Oh yeah.
They could make that completely above board.
Not only that, but you can also, if you use these NFTs and you get rid of the ability to transfer them. So you were saying earlier, who in the right mind would want to disable that? This is also a use case for that, where you say, okay, once you are assigned this unique item, for example, if you bought in early and you're an early access person, you got this new gun for this FPS. They can make it so that only your account is able to have that gun. Period. Ever. It's a special gun for your account. You can't transfer it.
Now that being said, yes, this does already exist in the form of simple code, but this is a use of something more. This is kind of this is a contract more than just a code feature.
Here's another thing. What if you had multiple games that use the same assets and had the same models involved inside? But what if you had multiple games that use these same assets, or the same assigned quantities of assets to different users, and you just came in with your private key and the blockchain, which is publicly available, blockchain info built right in, and you just logged into the game and all your shit all ready to go. But a completely different version of the game. Say you're able to rack up stuff in Doom and bring it with you into Doom 2. It's entirely plausible to do that if you have this persistent storage that's distributed in the blockchain.
Well, when describing it that way, it kind of seems redundant, and
it kind of does, right?
And that's not really a good way of describing it because it.
I know, Doom and Doom 2 is kind of hard. But say you've played through Pokemon and you got kind of to the end game area, and then you're like, oh, but I want to play the next version of it. Say you played Pokemon Red and you're like, oh, I want to play Pokemon Silver, but I wish I had all this stuff from the first one. If you had that built into a blockchain scenario, you could just start that in with the next one, and have all that stuff there.
I think I understand, and I'd like to see if I can make this into an understandable analogy, maybe for the younger people, because I think there's some folks in their middle 20s that might listen, and I think there's a lot of folks that are in their 30s and 40s that listen. So a lot. Those few that listen, anyway, I think the ages range from the 20s to 40s. So to put this into something that would be understandable, it would be the Pokemon's actually a good example, but we'll use the Pokemon card game because largely those cards are interchangeable, even from the earliest versions, or Magic the Gathering, for instance. Either one would work for this instance.
Uh-huh.
So you've got all these cards from all these different eras, and they are all essentially interchangeable as long as you know the rules for the basic game in which they exist. It's just a matter of having them and bringing them along. And with this, it would allow every single card in this case would be serialized individually and could be given transfer rights or non-transfer rights for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only way that that could then be transferred, depending on how tied to that identity you are, is the wholesale
So
surrender of that identity.
a good example of this, actually, that exists already, is marble cards.
Oh yeah, or really any collectible card. There's only so many.
Oh no, like marble cards is a legit is a thing that. Hold on, let me just there you go, marble.cards. Blah blah blah, and show ideas. So there's a link. Can skip through all this shit, and then I can go and get into switch to this. Okay. Which one was it? I think it was this one. So I just have to reload this page and log into the wallet and see my card. Yep, that's the right one. I mean, I have a fuck ton of these already. By fuck ton of these, I mean like a couple hundred of them.
Oh wow!
Like at this, I have 204. Well, that's the thing. So these marble cards are made by they're made unique to a web address. But all you actually own on the blockchain is a unique identifier. Like I said, you have the ability to sign on to the transfer of an item, or to assert your actual ownership of it by signing off on a prompt, a request for authorization, or request for authentication. So it's kind of like a one-time password in that sense. So like it's like two-factor. So it's a challenge response thing. You sign off on the challenge as the response, and it goes, okay, it's verified. To say whether or not you have something.
All right.
So like that's the way I was talking about, like the ticket in the movie theater kind of scenario. Like you could have a door that just does not open unless you have a ticket stub NFT. In that scenario where I talked about the barcode scanning above.
Now,
scanning
one thing
below.
this legitimately does allow for in that specific use case scenario is you can have scalpers, sure, but you can't have fake tickets.
Yes, correct.
Because
absolutely, there's zero way to forge them in that sense.
Yeah.
Unless you have the ability to, unless you are the one who's in charge of the smart contract, and you add in a function to allow you to, quote, print extra tickets, and then you're just the guy in charge that day, and then you print a bunch of extra tickets. Even then, doing that, it would be written onto the blockchain. It's not like you wouldn't be able to know that somebody did this.
Yeah, the record.
You wouldn't necessarily know who.
As an intrinsic part of those tickets, as a matter of fact.
So you can keep track of where those tickets went. You can see which addresses got those tickets, and you use them. But you couldn't necessarily know who had those addresses that tickets got to. So that's one of the great things. That's the anonymous nature that comes into this, or at least pseudonymous nature of that is still somewhat maintained with these NFTs.
Yeah, they're basically about as anonymous as you want to be.
And so
if you take kind of all the pains, they can be quite anonymous.
So imagine like with early Twitter, before all the extra tracking shit was built into it. You had your handle, and then that was all anybody knew about you until you told them otherwise. So in this case, you have an address on the Ethereum blockchain, or the Bitcoin blockchain, or any of these blockchains, and that's all anybody knows about you until you tell them something more. So like getting an NFT is telling someone something more about you, but until you tell someone, oh, I own that NFT, they're not really going to know a whole lot. So like just having, it's like this is one of those things where back in, I say back in the day as if these don't exist anymore, but there were Bitcoin blenders. And basically the idea was that if you do enough transactions, the ability to track back an output to an input, so someone else having a Bitcoin value that came through some convoluted chain of events from you, the further out that goes in transactions, the less likely it is that it can be tracked back to you. Like, by huge orders of magnitude, less likely. So way less than 1% chance. If you just put them through one of these blunders. And all the blunder does is perform multiple transactions in a loop, basically, through a bunch of different addresses. And it bundles up these transactions together. You and then several other people put in their Bitcoin. A small percentage of it is taken out for the transaction fees for each of the different transactions that has to occur in order to get it back to you, as well as a small percentage to fund whoever's running that operation. So via that mechanism, you and 100 other people come in and get your put your value in, you get your stuff back out minus a small percentage of it, and then there's no way to track the input and output from that, especially if you do the smart thing and have the stuff you put in go out to a different address that you still have the private keys for. So in that sense, you can truly anonymize the transactions you perform on these blockchains. And several blockchains kind of built in mechanisms like this. Anoncoin was a fantastic project that just was before its time. It still exists, kind of, but no one's really hashing that network right now.
Right.
And that's unfortunately also a proof of work network, so you're still stuck on having that inefficiency for the power draw.
So they're kind of at that Bitcoin stage, basically.
Yeah, well, so Anoncoin came out when anonymity became a big thing. There are several other currencies that exist because of the privacy safeguards they have built into them, and those are all fantastic projects. Unfortunately, none of them are proof of stake.
Oh, they're all proof of work, so they have a heavier CPU.
So there's one that's missing in the middle between proof of work and proof of stake. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's still energy intensive, and it still doesn't you still have to do work, basically. And it's when we get the proof of stake, it's so much more energy efficient that it's going to blow out the competition once F2 takes off, and it's kind of already taken off right now, mind you. So it's past the ICO right now. The stakeholders are making the network strong enough to really get ready for the sharding event that is going to fork the Ethereum network. But you have to have 32 Ethereum or 32 F2, which are 1-to-1 equivalent right now with Ethereum between the blockchains. You have to have 32 of them to stake right now. 32 Ethereum is a lot of money. That's between that's like 75 grand or so, I think, right?
That's a fair sum.
Yeah, it's a fuck ton of money right now.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So you have to. What staking means is you have committed these coins to the stakeholders' ability to produce transactions, and you get a piece of that transaction back. So the mining cost that is normally associated with doing Bitcoin, that usually just all of it goes to the miner. Well, in this case, the miner doesn't really have to do so much work as they do have to have uptime. So you're kind of committing your coin to someone's promise to stay online, signing new blocks. And as a reward for that, they are given the mining reward, which then gets distributed to the stakeholder and the people who have put in their staked coins. So you earn a return on investment on this, but then you can't spend these coins. So the Cosmos Atom coin is a good example of this. The staking process is instantaneous. You immediately start gaining rewards, but you can't do anything for 21 days once you stake your coins. And then if you want to take them back out, you want to withdraw them from being staked against on some stakeholder, it takes 21 days to get your coins back. So that mechanism has a way of smoothing out the volatility as well, at least on shorter timescales.
I can understand that.
Now, the staking time of...
Well, anyone's going to know just how volatile Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
And its fluctuations.
Yeah, so Ethereum 2 may or may not allow that kind of volatility disruption. It depends on what their staking timings are. I think that they're more or less instantaneous, because that was one of the things that really made me hesitant to go in with Cosmos. Um, that made me, like, I was kind of like, I don't know. But, like, I did put in some, and it's paid off pretty well in general, but like it's not perfect. This recent volatility here was a great time to get out, and then I have to wait 21 days. So that's not happening, obviously.
Yeah, no,
But that's also not a bad thing, because it does make your less. It definitely curtails a lot of these less rational decisions that are made. Unless you're on fucking Coinbase, it just allows you to put in and come out of out of Cosmos willy nilly, because they manage all of the volatility in the back end, and they assume all of that risk. But they just allow you to theoretically stake your coins with them automatically, even though
that sounds kind of dangerous. But then, being a money changer has its.
If everybody pulled out immediately from Cosmos on Coinbase, and then immediately demanded everything that they transferred it to back from Coinbase, they would be in a pickle for 3 weeks. But at the end of that 3 weeks, they could easily just kind of divest and be done with it. But there's enough, like, they would need to have a significant share of their users jump into Cosmos and fuck them like that. Like a gigantic portion of their users. And they are the stakeholder in that case. They're not. They're the staker. Is what they're called in the system as stakers. They're the staker that you would commit your coins to. So, and that's all transparently done automatically in the back end, meaning that they effectively bypassed the whole 3-week delay by allowing you just to not have to see it.
Yeah. Well, I guess they are.
It still exists. That's the thing. It's built into the protocol, so it's not like it doesn't exist. It still
it's
exists.
Not gone. It's just somebody else.
But Coinbase has assumed the risk that is associated with it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's on them. I mean, if they've got the faith that it's going to work, then more power to you, I suppose, right?
Yeah. It's not like it's not working for them right now. The big problem that they have is that their APR for using Coinbase as a staker is like 5%, and their competition is like 8.5 or 9% APR.
Oh well, that's fair. I mean, you're going to draw a lot.
Yeah, so they have a shit rate, but it's all kind of taken care of in the back end if you're on Coinbase's exchange. If you're off Coinbase, you can still use Coinbase as a staker, but that means you now have to deal with all the issues of doing that yourself, which is presently what I have to have fun dealing with, for example.
Oh, and as a note, since we're on the topic of money and everything right now, GameStop is, as of this weekend, $151.18. So it's
never got down to $10, did it, fuckers?
It's pretty much cemented its position.
I'm glad. That's good for them. I mean, I hope GameStop actually gives a shit about gamers again, but in general, that's a good thing. Like, fuck those assholes on Wall Street.
And Nokia is doing totally okay at $4.20 a share.
Oh, and I hope people are helping out with the silver squeeze, buying their physical silver and demanding delivery.
Indeed.
And not buying those silver indices, which mean fucking nothing.
Yeah, no, actually have your precious metals if you're going to have precious metals.
Yeah. So I got silver years ago now, and copper, and a couple other different kinds of metal. Copper, when I got it, it was $75-ish for 100 ounces, and the silver was about $18 for an ounce. And look at where it is today.
Oh yeah, that's a
sound
investment.
Now I don't have tons of the stuff, but if I was to go back in time, I would have skipped. At this point, the Bitcoin thing has its big benefits in terms of the way the volatility works, but it has that cycle.
Well, if we all could have gone back, we would have gotten ourselves a Bitcoin out of the Bitcoin faucet.
Yeah. I also wouldn't have sold Bitcoins in certain ways or spent them in certain ways, and there's all that kind of stuff. But, like, all that shoulda, coulda, woulda. But in terms of the metals, like when I went, go back in time to when I was buying them. At the time, I wasn't doing as much in crypto. I would have put more of that cash towards the longer term investment of the metals, because let's be honest, the pain in the ass of selling that shit off is going to be one of the large reasons I end up keeping that asset in the long term.
Yeah, fair enough. And
so like the copper, I think, is up to like $150, $160 for 100 ounces, and I know silver is up to like 35 or whatever, right? I don't know what's the spot price of silver right now. Silver spots. Silver price today. Well, that doesn't help me. You didn't actually say the damn thing.
I do not have something for.
Oh, what's the AppMex price? That would tell me something.
I'm gonna have to get us.
Okay, so AppMex says 26.14. That's fine. So AppMex peaked in February at 29.49. So here's the funny thing: if you look at the gold and silver ratio over time, and you look at where the silver standard, the gold and silver standard, was completely removed from the U.S. dollar. So that was 70 whatever. 68 was when we went off the gold standard, and then 70 whatever was when we went off the combined metal standard. If you look at that point in time, silver diverges drastically from gold in that ratio. The ratio just the silver to gold ratio just plummets, and that's because the people who are holding silver would keep the silver as they started issuing silver certificates, which inflated the supply drastically in the same way that you do with fractional reserve currencies for fiat currencies. Like debt dollars is an inflated currency supply. They inflated the silver supply by issuing these promissory notes, these silver certificates or silver dollars. Not like an actual round, like a silver dollar, but like the silver certificate worth $1 an amount. That was a paper certificate. So those are all promissory notes that inflate the supply. The same way that you have unfulfilled.
And there are stories of those, by the way, where you could go in and demand that this be exchanged for the amount of the metal it represents.
Right. So the thing is, it's kind of like a run on the banks that is going to be provoked, and it's somewhat started to happen already. And it's funny. There's like that one. Was it the Perth Mint in Australia that had their CEO come onto Twitter and be a real dick, and then suddenly their mine collapsed under the demand for fulfilled accounts because they're fucking idiots. COMEX, which is a big metals market, commodities exchange, they have a certain amount of holdings they're required to keep to cover their bases, and then they have a margin on top of that they use as their buffer. So they have like they have kind of their baseline, and they have like a surge capacity that they do they keep around to do all their margin trading and all their commodities exchange on top of the unfulfilled accounts. So they have like these accounts that are not supplied with physical metal held at the exchange, but the owner technically owns the metal. And so what happened with a lot of people demanding physical delivery is COMEX, for the first time in decades, had to increase its purchasing requirements from mines, and it pulled in like 40% of its supply in new purchases from mines to cover all the metal that people have been stacking at home.
So not unlike what happened with that one venture capital firm and GameStop early on.
Kinda. So the difference here is that COMEX is not going to fold and lose billions of dollars.
No, they own mines.
The value's already been promised. They just have to provide the physical metal. So they had to go. But the thing is, they had to go out and buy it from the mines at an increased rate from normal.
Whereas
and so what'll happen
in this
is
case,
the mines
we
are going to
were dealing with more than it was 140%. So it would have been asking for more than the mines had.
Well, here's the thing though: is imagine with GameStop stop that the stocks are being produced at a certain rate annually. you have to buy metal faster than the mines are producing it to drain out the metal from the commodities exchanges, from these exchanges that that promise you that they have the metal and they don't. You have to deplete the mine's capacity to produce metal, which is possible. They aren't rapid industry. You know, they aren't like producing
Right, and it is a
gigantic
finite
quantities.
resource at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. So and the other parts of the other, so most of like the computers and electronics industries dominate the metal consumption for silver, but the consumer demand for silver jumped so much that COMEX had to go out and purchase extra metal to make that happen. And I think it was the Perth mine in Australia got buried under that demand, and they had these unfilled accounts that had that. So some of these mines also act as exchanges, or at least stores of wealth, kind of commodity exchanges. And so they'll promise you that they have this amount of metal that they will hold on hand for you. Well, if you demand the physical metal and they don't have it, then they default, and then they're subject to regulatory retaliation. Basically, they get punished. And there's a couple mines in Australia that got pinched by this recently, and the way that's going to screw the industry is that mining capacity might go away, because if the mine folds as a business, they aren't mining anymore. They have to sell off to somebody else, and if nobody else is buying, then the mine shuts down. So that just accelerates things, and it's hilarious that a true silver squeeze might happen later this year. If there's a bunch of internet autists using their government dollars to buy more silver.
That is kind of wild.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that they were able to make that the whole COMEX thing happen in the first place. Let alone that they fucked like more than one mine in Australia. Now they don't just produce silver; they also do several other types of metals like zinc or cobalt or what have you, manganese. But like they'll produce other metals as a part of their process. In fact, copper mines, one of their major byproducts is going to be the precious metals that are embedded in the copper when they do the refining part of their process to make the high grade coppers.
Oh, sure.
So the copper sludge or the anode sludge that they make, the anode and cathode sludges that they get are going to have your precious metals like platinums, golds, silvers, all kinds of those transition metals that have high value to them are going to be present in that sludge that falls off of the one electrode as it's transferred to the other. So that basically pays for itself in the industry, and that just becomes an extra value product they produce. All it has to do is cover the smelting part of it at the end, which is not that hard. You can do selective precipitation after you just dissolve it again, and that's immediately pays for the copper refining itself.
Oh, well, there you
So
go.
copper is a great metal to get into just for that alone, because its production capacity is really not going anywhere. But silver is hilarious because if the squeeze really hits hard, like I think the true value of silver is supposed to be like up in the 800s or something. Now that's not likely to happen this year, but over $40 I could see happening.
Boy, that'd be something.
That would be hilarious.
I've heard. I haven't ever really followed this until just kind of lately,
Yeah.
and even still, I'm not really following that. I'm only really following stocks. I do need to follow the exchange, but either way, I've heard this said a number of times that silver has been undervalued.
Yeah, those
Gold
is what I mean.
kind of obviously so, but silver like notoriously so.
Yeah, and this is the reason why they have these issued certificates, etc., and industry hoovers that stuff up from the mines. So the commodity side of it for the consumer action, like the reason it is mined so heavily is because of the electronics and electronics industry, computers industry, etc. It's really necessary there. It is so good at conducting electricity without losses. It is a major inner circuit exchange inside of your CPU. It's also fantastic for thermal conduction. It's got so many industry uses. If the silver price went up from people holding silver at home, so this is one of the major ways that the inflation has hit it. So many of these accounts are not fulfilled. They're not actually metal in hand. That if everybody demanded their metal in hand right now, it would collapse the industry. Like, if you think there's a problem because of the silicon shortage right now, if there's a silver shortage from everybody demanding physical delivery, which they have a right to do if they own the physical silver, it would definitely collapse the electronics industry and the computer industry. Like, it's just no doubt about it. So those industries are so heavily limited by silver production capacity that if we didn't have the ability of people to do these quick trades with unfilled accounts, it would. So like the price per kilo is $840. The ounce is $296.14. This is APMEX. So the silver spot, by the way, is always going to be less than what you're going to pay for like an individual ounce by a lot.
Oh, of course. Well, it's like look at the price of a.
I'll go to eBay, for example, and I'll look for silver, a 1 ounce silver round. 1OZ silver rounds. So they usually call them rounds, not coins. Just FYI.
Duly noted.
So let's see if I scroll down here for a little bit. 1985 Engelhard 1 ounce prospector, blah blah blah, $24.50. But if you look at a lot of these other bits here, you'll see them in the range of like it depends on the numismatic value that's associated as well. So if there's like a special edition of some coin, it's gonna be more. Let's see. So these 1/10 ounce coins, there's a lot of 5 of them for $30. That's half ounce for $30. That's gonna be because of the Lady Liberty design on them or whatever.
Numismatic value or whatever.
Trump coins. There's Trump coins or a 2021 Doggy coin 1 ounce silver coin here. It's $50. I don't know who the fuck is spending $50 on a silver coin right now. There's a 2020 Trump 1 ounce coin, $49. A Buffalo round, so it has an Indian guy in the front. It's $38.30, so $38. So it's not, it's not $24 is kind of the take home here. It's going to be somewhere between 30 and 50 is what it looks like. This is what I was saying. Like I was seeing $35. That's I guess gone up here a little bit. Because those Trump coins I saw for like, okay, here's one for $42. This is what I was seeing it for before. But then there's other ones that are $55 for $56. So 37, 45. If I average these out, my guess from what I've been seeing here is that it would come down to something like $35. Which, again, numismatic value is going to be a large contributor here, or at least that's what's going to be told to you in order to buy it. But it also, again, this is purchasing like individual ounces. If you get like 20 ounce tubes, you're going to be paying better rates.
Yeah, I mean, you would have. When
I got my silver, I was paying on the order of $18 or $20 for an ounce, and I was buying like 5 or 10 ounces at a time. So I wasn't getting like multiple tubes of the stuff to get the best price possible. But if you went out there and you bought yourself a 20 ounces of silver in tubes, you would definitely get a much better rate than what I'm quoting here per ounce.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that would go without saying.
Like, there's a 2021 Wall Street Bets coin. It's $45. That's just so much money. Well, I mean, silver has always been kind of like the $20 bill of these coins. In my experience, like it's almost always been in my lifetime around $20-ish. So, the fact that it's like, okay, so Lego 1 ounce silver Legos, $52 a piece
Huh. Wow. Are
for a
they actual
fucking ounce.
Legos?
They're hand poured
That's actually pretty
building
dope.
blocks, the 2x4 building blocks.
Okay, that's actually really dope.
It's really cool, but like at the same time, there's no way I would pay that much per ounce. I would buy the raw silver and pour my own at that point.
Oh yeah, no,
It's
absolutely.
cheaper to do that.
No,
Oh,
absolutely.
there was some guy who was saying, like, I can't remember which. I think it might have been a Pleddit thread, or it might have been a Chan thread or a Reddit thread. There's some guy who was saying, like, just what you do with these commodities contracts, if you have the cash on hand and you're looking to get in to seriously fuck these people, is buy it on commodities exchange, get the contract through futures, and let the contract expire, and then demand physical delivery of the contract, because then it comes directly from the mine, and it doesn't go through the exchange. And then you just have it show up at delivery location if you're near a delivery location, and they're always in like New York or New Jersey. So if you're in that area, just get the physical delivery on an expired futures contract, and then you go and you pick up like your 5 kilos of silver or whatever, just directly into your car, and then drive off with it.
Also, good reason to have your CCW or CDW, whatever they call it in your state.
Right. Well, in New York, of course, you have to have like imminent danger or
Yeah,
whatever.
if you're in the fascist state of New York, it's a completely different issue. But
But yeah, like it's as soon as you get out of New York, you can discover your gun in your holster again. But yeah, so the funniest thing is you can completely bypass COMEX and any of that associated taxation penalty just by getting the physical delivery of the metal from a futures contract that expires.
fascinating.
Now, futures contracts are big contracts. The lots are not small lots, so you need to know damn well what you're getting into and what it will cost to get out of it if you get stuck with it.
Well, as you said, a couple kilos. That's
well, it's not a couple. It's a lot of kilos.
How many kilos are you talking here?
Oh,
say
fuck,
silver.
it's a lot size. Let me look this up. Okay.
Oh,
So
oh, you mean like a lot, as in like
a
not just
silver
a lot,
futures
but like
contract. Like, yeah, not like a lot as in a bunch, but like a lot as in a quantity.
Okay, yeah, that has a completely different connotation. That makes me think of a pallet as opposed to
Right.
a
It's
basketball.
like that. Okay. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. So this one's this is a lot. This one says, okay, how many ounces in a silver futures contract? 5,000.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's not a lot. That is a lot.
So OZ to KG. Let me put in 5, 1, 2, 3. So that's 141 kilos. 142 kilos.
So basically, the rear end of your car is going to be noticeably lower.
Yeah, you're gonna have a heavy car that day. Now, they will never deliver from the futures. Like for the future stuff, it is pickup only. But if you can afford to pick up, and you do this, that it's like I said, it's a fuck ton of money to invest. But
Well, not really.
but
for
COMEX will never get their hands on it. It never goes through them. They will never get the actual silver.
And you get to take direct delivery of.
And that's going to be closer to the spot price. So if I just assume it's like if it's rounded up from the spot price of $25 times 5,000 ounces, that's $125,000.
That's a fair investment, but
right, it's a decent sized house, right? In some states, I guess that's gone up. That's gone way up too, hasn't it?
Indeed, it has. Indeed, it has.
Okay, so that's like that's several decent cars.
Certainly.
So,
although
that's
all likelihood, even today at those prices, a very fair investment.
Right. So here's the thing: is M0 has not stopped going up by a lot.
And As a
A
matter of
lot.
fact, I'd very much. I've got a guest. We were supposed to get on near the end of last year before
Uh-huh.
uh, the sky fell, we'll say, and everything had to change, and we all had to completely change our plans. But I'd still like to get him back, Adam Townsend, and we were going to talk about the future of some of these commodities and economics as we start getting
Uh,
into space.
well, economics has definitely changed here, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've kind of got to
Uh,
refigure all that.
I
But
gotta
that
tell you,
said, I
the
mean,
first company that ropes in an asteroid into Earth orbit and starts mining that shit
oh yeah, that's it.
is gonna make so much fucking money.
Yeah,
Hand over fist, no contest. The same with the moon. The first company to fire back metal from the moon is gonna make so much money.
yeah. There's, well, basically, just above us, not even all that far, is basically infinite resources.
Well, it's what a quarter of the planet. Well, a little less than that, but it's basically a miniature planet worth of
Oh, I don't,
resources.
I don't even mean the moon. I mean just literally above us and just outside of just outside of the Earth. I mean, there's asteroids aplenty.
Sure. Well, we
So,
could even go for the Earth Trojans.
oh sure, yeah, but I mean, there's so much out there that all we've got to
So,
do is get out there and start
if you didn't
gathering
realize
it up.
that this is one of the reasons I have issues with the way that the international governance has reclassified planets as having cleared their orbital paths. Massive planets, by their very nature of having mass at the scale of a planet, will attract and maintain asteroids in their Lagrange points, the Trojan asteroids. So Jupiter has well-known Trojan asteroids. Earth has its own Trojans. They exist. They're ahead and behind the Earth in the orbital path, and the Earth will never clear them because they're trapped in their Lagrange points.
Hmm.
So you can send a mining platform. You can just get it out of the Earth and let it hang out in our orbital path, and then just travel retrograde a little bit. So just slowing down, but keeping the push away from the sun, so that it eventually ends up, slowly tracking backwards. It will come into the region of these asteroids. They're not big by any stretch of the imagination, but they're big enough to be worth looking at. And you can get some precious metals from some of these. Not every one of them is going to have them, but if you're looking for shit like iridium, which is not very abundant on Earth, but is way more abundant. Like iridium and platinum and things like that are pretty abundant in asteroids, but not here. And they're really expensive here because of that.
Yeah,
And
basically,
mine that shit up there.
it changes everything. As soon as we're doing more manufacturing and resource gathering off world,
Yeah.
everything changes, and we're going to
Now,
see this happen in our lifetime.
Now, what thing we won't probably see in our lifetime is a gigantic drop in price. But you might see some drop in price.
Well,
And that's
I
going to
mean,
be
not
largely
with
due
that
to
kind of attitude, we won't.
well,
But
it's largely due to the sunk costs in getting equipment and infrastructure in place.
oh, sure,
That's
sure.
going to have a payback period of a couple decades, probably. But then after that, like that's just it. The next company is going to show up and compete with them.
Oh yeah, once there are facilities on the moon, basically, that's
Yeah,
when
we have a
it
launch
all
point
changes.
there.
And that's
So like,
that's what's starting now, and there might be another space race for it, and that would
oh,
probably be the
it's
best
already
thing.
started. It's already started, and it's one of I bitched about this I think a couple episodes back when I was talking about Russia and China launching a joint venture to the moon, and we're sitting over here with our fucking thumb on our ass.
Yeah, well, we've got to throw money in the diversity fire, so we've got our priorities.
Yeah, we should be on Mars already.
Yeah,
And at least Elon Musk has a fucking clue.
yeah, there should be a Mars base. I mean, looking at the timeline of things, how they should have played out if money had just been spent right since the end of the space race, we should have a city on the moon, and we should have a base on Mars today.
Yeah.
Maybe
Here's
not
the
a
thing,
big city.
We have the technology.
Yeah,
We have the
today, with the
technology.
technology that exists right now,
We
we could
had
make
we
these
had the
things happen.
technology when the Cold War ended and took the space race with it. We had the technology in the mid '80s to put a city on the moon, not a base, a fucking city. And we had the resources at the time. We still theoretically have the resources.
Yeah, and looking at newer tech from Elon Musk, the Falcon heavy lifters, I mean,
Right.
it's going to be even easier to do soon.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. Um,
But now it looks like it's going to happen on the back of private industry, which I don't necessarily have a problem with.
well, the problem I have is that, and Elon Musk is a patriotic enough guy, so I'm not saying he's gonna jump ship here. The problem is not only that he could go with another country, but that other countries will be in competition with him that are willing to put the country-wide resources behind their endeavors, whereas he
That's
will only have the
Yeah, that's a
limited.
very real concern. You're dealing with a corporation, however big, versus a nation.
Yeah,
Or
and
in the case of China, you're it doesn't matter which corporation you're dealing with, the
right.
face of the nation.
So, so Elon's a great guy, and he's doing what he's doing, and we're gonna get to. So the thing is, he's basically got his eyes on Mars, which is a great idea.
It really
Mars
is.
is another place. Is
If
now
nothing
it's a
else, it's
fairly
an amazing
hostile place.
benchmark.
So Mars is a hostile place, mind you, a very hostile place to live. But it is easier to live there. It has more gravity than the moon. It has more atmosphere, even though that comes with problems. Um, it's the sandstorms that happen there aren't going to actually like rip up your spaceship necessarily, because the air on Mars is
Yeah, the atmosphere is significantly less dense.
it's like 5 millibar, whereas here on Earth it's like a hair over 1,000 millibar
Yeah, so
on
literally
average.
a fraction.
Yeah, it's tiny. It's around it's less than 1%. So it's around 0.5%. So it's got hardly the density of the air on Earth, and that means when it flings dust around, which on Mars is like the consistency of flour, that dust gets everywhere. That's the main problem from the dust, is that it gets everywhere. Not that it's gonna like blow a spaceship over and destroy it or something. It's probably not. It's gonna be like a light breeze, even though it's whipping by you. It's crazy speeds.
And as a matter of fact, on that specific note, if you
But it will
want to
wear
get an
something down.
idea of the kind of atmosphere and atmospheric pressure there is on Mars, look at the tests and how the testing had to be done for the new Mars flyer,
Yeah.
and how much they had to counterbalance and take weight off the thing because, or I guess I should say they had to account for how thin the atmosphere was because it
Yes.
can't fly under its own weight
So
in an atmosphere this heavy.
yeah. So that was actually one of the cool things with the research I did do with NASA, is that it was designed around the idea of having a 3D printer make the drones on Mars fly around, return back to the rover, get mulched up back into pellets, and then print it out again as necessary. So hopefully that actually happens one day. That'll be really cool.
I have
But
no
also,
doubt that
by
it
the
will.
time that happens, hopefully there's humans on Mars.
There
'Cause
should
then
be
you'll
now,
have.
but we're
Yeah,
finally getting there.
So I think Elon Musk's plan. I think the first manned mission is like 2025 or 2030. And it's probably going to be a one-way trip for a while. They
Oh
might
yeah,
it's going to be like, it's going to take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get there, which is a while. If you use certain Lagrange pathways, so there's these kind of like, because of the way the gravity works out between the planets, there's like these places where it's way more efficient to fly through, but it might take longer. And then there's some timings where it's way more efficient to fly through, but it takes less time. And kind of the fastest way that you can kind of brute force it is about 6 months. And that window happens about every 24 months. So that's a tough one. The people who go there first are probably going to be stuck there for 4 or 5 years potentially, just waiting for the timing to get right. So the first crew gets there, lands. They have to wait for a couple of years for the next crew to be able to take off. Gets there, lands. They have to wait for the rest of that timing to get the timing right to fly back, and then they fly back. And then by that time, it's probably 5 or so years down the line. So a 5-year round trip is a pretty significant investment to ask from an astronaut, especially with no record in the past of success.
Well, that's true. But, it's one of those things, it's work that needs to be done. So
yeah.
It's going to take somebody with a little bit more of a pioneer spirit.
It's also probably not going to take only 3 people. Right? So that's the other side of that is...
Yeah,
you're not going to send a crew of 3. You probably have to send a crew of 10.
You have to build a base. You don't have another option. You have communication, sure. And as a matter of fact, as we were talking about just before this show, by the time that this happens, we should have communication methods that are roughly at the speed of light. And that's going to make some of the creature comforts of home. We do, but I mean, it should be, instituted.
It just takes a while because space is big.
True.
So, light takes 8.5 minutes to get to here from the sun. Communicating with Mars is going to take on the order of 40 minutes, depending on timing.
Yeah. That said, I mean, you're not exactly going to be,
That's round trip, by the way, sorry.
Yeah, you're not going to be getting a really good ping, so you're not going to be playing anybody from Mars on Earth, but... And your Zoom meetings aren't going to be great.
There are articles about this recently. Like last year, there were articles about how the internet would work on Mars. And the way it would work is they would have an internet there, and they would have an internet here. Or we would have an internet here. You would be able to do email. And so there would probably be like data bursts that you'd do, or just like, one-way packets that are sent around.
Well, there would be a constant communication, obviously. It's just a matter of...
You would not be getting your email instantaneously responded to.
No, it would be much like the early days of the internet in communication between Earth and
it's not
Mars.
Just that it would be a bottleneck of one bidirectional pathway. The fact is that bidirectional pathway will be band limiting the entire internet from both sides of it. So the prioritization that goes on is going to be a major factor too.
Oh yeah, routing is going to be a completely different issue.
So you're not going to have the entire internet allowed access. You're going to have a very special. It's going to be back to the days of ARPANET, is what it's going to be.
Absolutely, at least in the early days, and as we were talking about, also until we come up with something new, some kind of Star Trek thing, subspace communication, or
we talked about quantum communication, and I explained how unfortunately that is the same physics applying here. There's no way to get entanglement to make things go faster for you without having the speed of light involved still.
Yeah, so even if we do have 2 computers that are set up one side to the other with entangled atoms to do the communication, they're still going to communicate at basically the speed of light. So
now you can link up extra entanglements, so to speak, but the maximum that you can transfer in that sense is the parity of it. That's with an I, not with an A. Parity. You can transmit the parity bit that tells you whether or not the other side has a certain state, and you need to know. It's the entanglement phenomena is a post hoc phenomena. You don't know this a priori until you get information about the other bit in the system. So while you can communicate significant amounts of information that way, it is fundamentally band limited to the speed of light. So there's no faster way to send it, but your bandwidth can go up a little bit.
Yeah. So there would be a bottleneck, and it would be significant, but it would not be as significant as you might imagine using that. That said, the real bottleneck, aside from that, until there were multiple quantum tunnels, shall we say,
it's just physics.
Until then,
so
the bottleneck's just going to be time. It's just going to take time to get
more satellites. You can put more satellites in orbit, and get more signals sent from more locations. But the problem is, you're talking about one planet to another planet, and if you include the size of their orbits, your target is still pretty much a pinprick on the night sky.
Yeah.
So, and it's a pinprick that is changing in size throughout the entire 2-year cycle.
And of course, you've also got whatever interference
And sometimes
come in
the
between
fucking
the two.
sun, sometimes the fucking sun's in the way.
Yeah, and that's
Lest you forget that's still in the system.
yeah. So it would, to be completely legitimate, we would have to have actually.
We'd have to have multiple bouncing points, yes.
Yeah, we'd have to have repeaters, I guess you'd say.
So the
the way.
Lagrange positions, the Lagrange points on both orbits, are excellent places to put stationary or at least semi-stationary platforms for use as repeaters.
Absolutely. And that's
And
honestly,
the downside,
this conversation in and of itself is probably worthy of its own show.
well, the downside there is that you now have to contend with the asteroids that occupy those areas.
Well, indeed you do. So
If they run into
any
your
of these repeater stations
right?
would probably be well suited to be some kind of space station in their own right.
Right.
I mean, because it's going to have to be looked after. And
There's a
maintained
major
anyway, so.
infrastructural challenge that's at play that's probably going to take a global solution to fix, which I know is going to make a lot of people in the audience groan. But
Well,
it's
the ISS works. So it's just a matter of doing
now
the
that
job.
could be a global solution made out of many local entities taking different tasks to heart, and then just at the end of it going, for the good of humankind and letting it go, which would probably be fantastic for their stock price in a certain sense.
Well, the thing about all this is, even if these places keep rights on some of these things, just the fact that infrastructure is there and in place allows other things to occur and allows other competition to grow over time.
Exactly. It's a lot of these are building steps that need to be done to get things to move forward. Like we said, just getting communication around the star in the center of our system is going to be hard.
A great example of this would be Ma Bell, AT&T back in the day. They were pretty shitty. They were pretty shitty, but I'll tell you what, we wouldn't be where we are today if they hadn't laid those telephone lines. And
Bell
allowed
Labs
us to have
a good example of where things would go.
Yeah.
You have private. So Bell Labs. So a lot of these large private labs that made these gigantic leaps in our technology as we know them from the last century got dismantled largely by offloading these public research efforts and private research efforts, both of them. So the government contracts and then the private efforts that went into them that were then published publicly after the fact. All of this kind of stuff kind of got offloaded onto universities and then incentivized under Bayh-Dole, which unfortunately meant a lot of universities immediately priced themselves out of competitiveness by expecting too much of a return on investment. So that largely flopped on its own, which is a real shame. But like the idea is still kind of sound if you reverse the process a little bit there and you take away from the universities, put it back into a private company, and give them the incentives of like reaping all the benefits that go through the choke point they now own. So those Lagrange points to own those platforms, if they get a government subsidy, for example, to maintain them, that's a pretty big boost. And especially if you put that into a promise to make a better platform or increase the number of platforms at different Lagrange points throughout the solar system. Those can be pretty big.
And as mentioned before, we're looking at a wealth of infinite resources. All we've got to do is go out, be out there, and gather them.
Now, there's one resource that you don't get back in all of this. This is one of the things that's going to make it really hard. There's one resource you can't get back, and that's time. That is the one that's the most expensive out of all the resources involved, is getting people to do things and spend their time on it.
Absolutely.
If you're talking about a multi-year commitment for a job, like going to Mars or going to the moon even, these are significant investments with significant known risks that have not been sufficiently...
and not insignificant unknown risks.
Correct, yeah. The unknown so the unknown unknowns are a major problem, but the known unknowns are still quite significant in these scenarios.
Absolutely. Well, it's a whole new frontier, quite literally. Unless
You know,
unless we're to believe some of the things we might have heard from Art Bell, that there's
right.
black ops space
Sure,
thing,
sure,
and
sure.
we've been doing the whole Stargate bit.
Well, yeah, so yeah, that part I find to be bullshit. I already know, like, and I can't go into that in as much detail as I want to. I already know that we have rods from God in the sky. Like, that's just a thing.
Yeah. Well, we saw
And
some
that's,
things.
which is annoying. Like, it's not the GI Joe's variety of it, mind you. It's not that big, but like, we got shit up there that will fuck people up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
that whole
The
idea that you can't weaponize space, like America already said fuck that noise a while ago. So while that's a problem in certain senses, um, China is also doing the same thing with their communications platforms and the way they're treating GPS. They've been building out their own GPS system, and it's functional now. And so the rods from God thing that I was talking about is in low Earth orbit, and that might potentially be useful against, say, Chinese GPS if they decide to start fucking with us and take over Taiwan. And they've been inching closer to that this year, which is really, really frustrating.
that's a fact.
They got Biden in the White House. They got what they wanted, and
Yeah, they got their man, and they're kind
they're
of
getting their
running with it.
money's worth. Although, did you see that recently? I found this to be pretty funny. Um, at first, the U.S. State Department decided that they weren't going to allow India to get any resources because they're currently being held for the American Production Act, the emergency production, to make COVID vaccines. And then I think just today, like it's yesterday now because it's 1:30 in the morning. We need to stop. Just yesterday now, so Sunday, news came out that the decision had been reversed and that the U.S. will send supplies to make vaccine to India.
Ah.
So at first there was a major Chinese victory, if you will, because China and India are still having throughout all this, they've still been having their border crisis. And I'm sure that China is very much displeased right now with the fact that India is getting supplies they asked for from the U.S. So,
And I can't imagine they much care for that. And I noticed that we have been doing some posturing in the South China Sea, which we absolutely need to do more of.
Yeah, what we need to do is we need to send in a fucking couple of cruisers and take out some of those artificial islands.
Probably not a bad idea.
I mean, that would be seen as a direct attack on China's sovereignty, so that might actually lead to war. So we should probably not do it immediately, but like if they attack Taiwan, we should immediately just destroy those places which are being used as launch sites for their planes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Also, what was it? Malaysia, or I think it is, had one of the little islets hanging off of it, a little cove. China sent some. It was the Philippines. China sent a fucking fleet of boats there and kept them there for months. Not allowed. Like they were there, and people could drive their boats in, but they weren't leaving when they were asked to.
That sounds like the China I know.
Yeah, and it also sounds like the Philippines I know. Fucking China's bitch, even though they're called authoritarian and whatever. It's their is it Duarte, whatever the hell his name is. He's happy. He's happy with the Chi-Coms being involved.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to take a lot of issue. Not much at all.
He's probably waiting for the Sinovacs to come in and be able to force that on his population.
Yeah,
that shit vaccine that isn't hard. That vaccine is like 50% effective or less.
Yeah, it is not great.
It's disgusting. And I bet you it's worse. Like in any of the side effect issues that we're complaining about with Johnson & Johnson.
Well, actually, that's not even one we're doing much complaining about. I'm complaining about the other ones. But even still, I can guarantee you that this one has way more issues than everything all put together.
Funny thing is,
they've got two, don't they?
Huh?
They have two, don't they? And they're both. Neither one is higher than 70. One's like 60 something. The other's like maybe 70.
So one of them was quoted by the Chinese as being 80% effective, and then in their out of country study, it was like 50%.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, that was bad. Because all of a sudden variants existed.
Yeah. That's one of the other reasons that I like to endorse the
No better
Johnson
than
and Johnson.
chance.
It
No better
seems,
than chance when you get that vaccine. That's going to work.
yeah, toss a coin.
Now, that's for new infections. Obviously, the major reason to get it at that point is to prevent death and hospitalization. Unfortunately, the Chinese didn't release any of that fucking data.
Yeah, but that
Not
being the
to my
case,
knowledge,
we can
anyway.
imagine that those numbers are not really conducive to their end. So,
So, and now the Chinese state media released some numbers, but that's the same 80% study, so I don't trust that shit at all.
yeah, they're, well, as they say, lies, damn lies, and statistics. And
The
then
Chinese lies.
when you add Chinese characteristics on top of that, well, you can just basically throw everything out the window. Because when you add Chinese characteristics to anything traditional, it's generally not going to work the same way ever again.
All right, it is 1:40 a.m.
Ah, so it is. Well,
So
what
I
shall
have
we
one
call
final.
this?
I have one final topic that we definitely need to bring up and cover tonight, especially because Steve is not here to ask for his cut. What's the dollar value we've gotten up to?
Oh, as of right now, we did hit 420 by 420. So,
Oh shit!
yeah, growing leaps and bounds. Let me see here. We'll refresh as of right now. With every listener, I figured it out. I'm getting about, oh, wow, 461.
Hmm.
That's pretty substantial.
And every penny of that is being paid forward towards maintaining that money in the account wherever it is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just gathering interest.
We're earning big dividends on this cash here.
Oh, man, cash money. One of these days I'll do the withdrawal. And hey, it says I've got an estimated audience of 10 people, and that's just through the one forum.
Damn.
So,
all right, we have successfully peeved 10 people into listening to us.
But that's
man, you gotta listen to these guys. They're so goddamn annoying.
Absolutely. But I mean, if we look at the numbers across the board, I do put this out everywhere.
Yeah.
Speaking of, this last episode, I got a copyright warning. No, not a copyright warning. A nudity and obscenity warning on YouTube because of one of the links. It did get dismissed.
I was gonna say, was it something they said? Because I could believe it.
No, surprisingly, no. I was figuring it's like, oh man, I even bleeped everything. But no, it wasn't that at all. It was one of the links to the place where they were talking shit about Steve. So I went back, censored that link, and everything's good. They rescinded it. They never got back in touch with me, so who knows. Yeah. But the thing was gone before the amount of time that it was supposed to be, and I don't have any strikes on my account, so
good.
We're all good. They're never going to pay me the money they owe. And they're probably never going to monetize my channel again. So I'll probably do the live streaming of this on something else. I want to put this up on Odyssey or whatever the BitChute thing that comes up is. Because, I'm wanting to do this show live so that we can actually take questions and callers.
I was going to say, did we have any questions or anything that have come up yet?
We do, but they all been addressed. So also, if you have any questions about this or any other show, just leave it in the comments anywhere you're seeing it, and I'll get it to myself or Craig. If you want to get in touch with either one of us, I'm Evan. I'm at that fake guy Dan everywhere except Facebook because fuck that place and that cyborg lizard that runs it. And you can find Craig at CraigBob99 just about everywhere, right?
Just about everywhere. Now, you'll basically be able to get me on Twitter. My DMs are always open, etc. on Twitter. I'm very accessible there. I'll occasionally swing by on Minds. I rarely go on to Gab.
I check my Minds all the time. I may not be super active there. I may only just do the advertising, but if you want to hit me up, you can always hit me up there. I'm actually always checking it, even though I'm not tremendously active. I like to use it.
And you can find me on Keybase at Xenomancer. So that's secure communications. If you have the need to do that, I'm open on there. I think you still have to add me to. I don't know if you have to add me to DM me there, but I think you can just open a chat and I just have to wave and say hi. But that's a straightforward place to get my attention as well.
And that's about that. So again, if you got anything, hit any of us up. You can also try and find Steve at Ratman720, but he's kind of abandoned social media like an intelligent person. So
Yeah.
we'll leave him to it. So anyway, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you again soon, and look for more interesting stuff coming up.